Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Pflugerville City Council at 7 p.m. This evening, we are very honored to have with us Troop 1407, and I have invited them to do the pledge this evening. Oh, by the way, we also have our ex-mayor pro tem Omar Pena in the house. Welcome.
Don't say woo.
So Scouts, if you'll get up, we'll do the pledge. And then remain standing for a moment of silence afterwards.
Start singing. You gotta get the flags. Nika, get the flags.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
You may be seated. Thank you, Scouts. Oops, we have some late Scouts.
You're right. I forgot. Forgot about this.
Welcome, Troop 1407. It's always great to have Scouts here. I was at a Scout ceremony this weekend, and you guys do an amazing job. Thank you very much. Our next item is public comment. Trista, do we have anybody here wishing to make public comment? If not, we will go on to reading of the consent agenda.
I would ask to pull items 4J and 4O.
4J and 4O. There you go.
Four F and 4G together.
4F and 4G.
Yeah.
Okay,
We are on city council.
go ahead.
All right, items 4F, 4G, 4J, 4M, and 4O have been pulled from the consent agenda. Item 4A is approving an ordinance on second reading with the caption and ordinance of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, amending ordinance number 1203-15-02-24 of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, as amended by changing the zoning designation of approximately 243.7 acre tract of land situated in the William Caldwell Survey number 66, abstract number 162, and the John Lee Survey number 18, abstract number 18, locally addressed 16430 Cameron Road from Agriculture Development Reserve to Parks, Facilities, and Open Space to be known as 1849 Park Rezoning, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. 4B is approving an ordinance on second reading, an ordinance of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, amending ordinance number 1203-15-02-24 of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, as amended by changing the zoning designation of approximately 153.239 acre tract of land known as Lot 1, Block 1 of the Wilbarger Creek Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility subdivision, locally addressed 10100 Greg Lane from Agriculture Development Reserve to Parks, Facilities, and Open Space to be known as the Wilbarger Creek rezoning. Items 4F, 4G, 4J, 4M, and 4O have been pulled. All remaining items may be acted upon in a single motion.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second it.
Your Honor works too.
Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 5 is a public hearing and ordinances. Conduct a public hearing and consider approving the first reading of an ordinance with the caption reading, an ordinance of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, amending ordinance number 1203-15-02- 24 of the City of Pflugerville, Texas, as amended by approving a specific use permit for industrial use light and office warehouse on approximately 42.23 acre property, generally located north of Cameron Road, east of the Northeast Metro Park, south of the Pecan Street, and west of State Highway 130, situated in the William Caldwell Survey, abstract number 162, City of Pflugerville, Travis County, Texas, to be known as the Scannell Specific Use Permit, providing a cumulative and repeater clause, providing for a non-severability clause, and providing for an effective date. Jeremy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this particular property, again, is outlined in red there. It's just west of 130, north of Cameron Road, and south of the 130 Commerce Center. You can see the Northeast Metro Park just there on the left-hand side. It's approximately 40-acre tract of land. Property that's just to the south of that is identified as 15,000 Cameron Road. You may recall not long ago we went through a specific use permit for that property to also have light industrial use as well as office warehouse there. And then to the north is the 130 Commerce Center, which also has a number of those specific use permits that are also in the. So the property today is zoned urban level 4 district. That is a zoning district which offers an opportunity for contemplating light industrial uses there, office warehouse uses, but going through the specific use permit process. The property is identified in the comprehensive plan as being an employment area. You may also recall that we have the districts also called out inside of the comprehensive plan. This happens to fall inside the East Pecan district, which identified, again, the eastern portion of it, the purple area, to be recognized as an economic hub of employment, offering an opportunity for some industrial and office warehouse land uses there. You may also recall that the comprehensive plan speaks to continuing the extension of the 130 Commerce Park and making sure that we're offering employment in this quadrant there. Again, the zoning today is the CL4 zoning district, and to be able to consider the specific use permit for the light industrial and office warehouse uses, it goes through the specific use permit process. And that's basically just to give you the opportunity to hear about the project, to see the concept of their design, and then to consider the appropriateness of that use at this particular location. On the screen represents the concept
Bless you.
plan.
God bless you.
The conceptual plan for this particular property, what they're identifying is three buildings to be located on this property. You can also see that kind of in a diagonal shape is a power line easement that crosses through the property, which makes it a bit challenging in locating where those buildings are to be located. You can also see the extension of Impact Way. That would be an extension from its current terminus further to the north as it moves through the PCDC property that's just to the north of this property. Then it would bisect this property in half, but it would continue that extension there.
So, Jeremy, am I seeing it correctly that part of the power lines bifurcate Building 2? A portion of it?
They run through that
Yeah.
quadrant, right? So that's what's made Building 2 be a smaller building there in that location. Truck courts are proposed to be located between buildings 1 and 2, and then at the east end of building 3, generally screened from Impact Way. There will be some landscaping pieces that are improved or proposed to be provided to be able to help ensure screening from 130.
Jeremy, I thought with our corridor districts in particular, we prohibited truck courts from abutting SH 130. Is this specific use permit going to, is that part of the specific use permit allowing that use?
So the specific use permit is allowing for the uses to be located there. In this situation, what we've offered was some conditions that would be related to how that truck's screening would be provided. That truck court for Building 3 would be located back behind that building. And then they've proposed to do additional vegetation that would be there as well as a berm.
Now, what's the elevation look like from 130? Would it actually be screened or would it be in plain view?
So at time of, and the applicant may be able to help with that, and that would also be something that we would be looking at site planning. time, but I think with the 3 foot berm and then the 8 foot tall plantings over the course of time, that's going to help screen that view.
Over the course of time, or
Yeah, as the
once?
vegetation grows, right?
And help screen.
Yes.
Help screen. And, you know, trees don't die, right?
And on the screen is the criteria for approval for a specific use permit. Again, we're looking at the harmonious nature of this particular use in this location, whether any adverse impacts of the area has been mitigated, whether the nature of the use is reasonable. The recommendation in the conversation with the applicants, we did come to an approval recommendation. It went to Planning and Zoning Commission. They also recommended approval with the conditions that are listed on the screen. The conditions there are identified as the service court area for building 1 and 2 should be oriented inwards between adjacent buildings and the primary facades, oriented outwards towards the public park and or public street. That's what they have represented. The primary facade of building 1 would be facing out that.
Go back to that map real quick for me. So the density of the plants there around the truck court, abutting SH 130, is that, I'm going to say, drawn to scale? Later on, you say four trees per 100 linear feet and 15 shrubs. Is that how many are drawn there, or that looks like an awful lot more?
Right at the moment, this is a conceptual layout.
Okay, so
I
that's
do-
not
right. I would not.
that's not accurate
I would
in
not
terms
say
of
that
landscaping
this
requirements.
is an approvable plan at this
Gotcha.
second.
That's
Okay.
that's an artistic rendering.
I just want to make sure. I want to understand if that's accurate to the requirements, or if that's showing something much at a much higher standard than what we've required.
They may actually have to put more landscaping on that site than what's shown right now.
And I'm assuming they're here.
They are.
All right.
So then again, the first bullet talks about the orientation of the buildings. The second bullet talks about building 3 and looking at the extension, doing the berms, as well as the additional landscaping. And then the last bullet was the no outdoor storage being permitted. These are generally consistent with the other specific use permits that we've talked about in the past. Talking about the service courts, again, this is building 3. The service court would be the area where you would anticipate to see the trucks moving in and out. That would be located back behind building 3. For building,
Jeremy, so a truck court, let me just make sure I have a clear understanding of that. Because I know we have one of our hotels in town that has overflow trucks parked in it from another business. Is that the intent? Is that's where all the trucks are parked, or is there like forklift loading and unloading going on in a truck court? What's the purpose of that, please?
so typically a service court area is going to be the location for these types of buildings. That's going to be where the loading docks are located and where the trucks are be backing in. You would have trailers there and their operations.
So
would be
it's
going
just
into-
extra space for the trucks to maneuver as opposed to a lot of trucks being parked there.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now,
But
In
you,
a- in
but
a
you
truck
still
court-
have the loading docks there
yes,
themselves.
you would still have loading docks, and so you could anticipate to see trucks being loaded there and parked there.
Yeah.
Well, and it's typically designed with an appropriate radius so that the truck can maneuver around back there. They can get in, they can back in, they can turn around and get out. But it's where the truck activity will be occurring,
That's correct.
whether it's parked or in motion.
Right.
It'd be very peculiar if they didn't have enough radius for them to.
On this particular image, this is one of those where we were having conversation about truck courts and where that service court area would be located. The red boxed area represents the area that we would recognize right now as a service court area. The area that's identified in yellow is an area that we would not include as being part of the service court, given that it's in front of building 2. If they were to come forward with additional screening that meets our screening requirements in the Unified Development Code, then we could look at that area. But under today's condition, under this alignment, that is not something that we would see as. The applicant is here. They do have a presentation that they can go through as well.
Sure, that's fine.
Yes, sir, further.
One more question for you, Jeremy. We talked about the power line easements, the power line that bifurcates the property.
Correct.
Can the truck courts be located within those easements?
I would defer to the applicant to be able to have a conversation about the nature of that easement.
I'm wondering, if it's allowable.
Right.
Evening, Mayor, evening, council. My name is Ethan Harwell, planner with Kimley Horn Associates. We're the civil engineers and planners on this project with Skinnell Properties.
So let me ask you something right off the bat.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the screening. I heard a lot of vernacular, a lot of language that seemed very muddled about it. That it possibly could, it likely more than not. Are you proposing screening that will truly screen what's happening there?
Yes, sir. So part of the condition that is proposed in the SUP this evening is that at the time of planting, our screening has to screen the trucks. So most likely our shade.
My apologies. So I just want to be clear. You said at the time of planting. So ultimately, for you to open this facility, the plants that you will have to plant there will be big enough to screen the various different things in there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That language is in the SUP ordinance.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So that looks like a combination of shrubs to screen lower levels, ornamental trees like a mountain laurel to screen medium levels, and then shade trees.
And will it be screening for all seasons?
Yes, sir. The requirement in the SUP ordinance is that these plantings must be evergreen.
That's good. Ask that question. That's a good question. That's a good
So,
question.
so my question was, what trees have leaves all year?
Live oaks have trees all year, varieties of cedar, as well as your Texas cedar elm would not be, your red oaks aren't. So most likely varieties of live oak. There's also, I apologize, it's escaping me, but there are several varieties of shade tree that are.
Thank you.
As
Yes,
long
ma'am.
as you don't plant any cedar trees that explode.
We will plant female trees.
Yeah.
As soon as you said cedar trees, I was like, oh Lord.
No, don't do it. Next.
Okay. You may proceed with.
Absolutely. So to shed a little light on what we're doing here, majority of what we've done on the site, how we've laid out the site, is due to these major site constraints. That power line easement there is actually two separate 100-foot easements belonging to Austin Energy and LCRA. Within those easements, we are allowed to put some flat work, surface parking, landscape, some lighting, as long as it meets certain height requirements and they're still able to maintain a safe distance from monopoles and that sort of a thing to be able to service those. So you will see some of our parking and landscaping tucked into those areas, but no structures. Building 2 has actually been further modified since this, as we've narrowed down the actual location of that easement around the power line, and will actually be slightly smaller than what you see here. We just had to clip a little more off the corner.
Can you go back to the original part? I'm assuming you're trying to show the elevation of the buildings themselves.
I don't think it was.
Did he?
Yeah, go back one. The next slide,
Am
the
I
first slide. The slide ahead, yeah.
Yeah, there we are. Yeah.
This
Okay.
slide?
Yes. Which one?
That's not an,
Oh, this is just part of our branding.
Just perfunctory.
Slide deck.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So with that, we do propose these three buildings. Our site is the missing link in Impact Way. East Group is bringing up Impact Way and utilities from the south. The existing business park to the north and the PCDC site are bringing it to the south, and they'll meet here in the middle of our site.
Can you go back to your previous slide? Because that was your proposed rendering. Am I correct?
This one, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. The next slide, correct? That one right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go back to. Please. I'm sorry. I should have said please. Okay. So none of those. That is a stark difference from the other ones with that. And you're saying these are just these aren't actual sites where you're doing light industrial. These are just projects that you've done previously. Is that it?
These are some of our light industrial sites that we've completed previously, but this is not proposed on this.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, you see where I'm going.
Yes, sir.
That is a stark difference between these and what you're proposing right now. Why such a juxtaposition?
Are you looking at something
What-
in particular about these renderings?
Well,
why,
look at-
why are ours ugly?
yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry. Did I get to the point?
I'm trying to be polite, but I'm like, wait a minute.
Doug, could you beat around the bush a little more?
What are
I
you
mean,
trying
we're
to
trying
say?
to get to the point.
What are you trying to say, sir?
Sorry, was that
So,
out loud?
Allow me to introduce. This is Charles Skinnell, a developer with. Charles Knowlton, developer with Skinnell Properties. Could you just say a little bit about your architecture?
Good evening, council. Sorry. So that page is just a kind of boilerplate starting off PowerPoint that we have.
But they're actual projects.
But those
that
are
you have
actual
completed.
projects,
Those are,
right?
Yeah, those are actual.
Okay, just want to make sure they're
Okay.
actual projects. It's not just a boilerplate. It's actual
No,
projects.
those are projects that we've built. They're
I
throughout
appreciate
the
that.
year
And they're light industrial projects that you've built, correct? Or am I wrong?
some of those are not light industrial.
Okay, so
That's
let's
just
go.
showing the magnitude.
So how about we
type
go?
of-
Let's go back to that first page, please.
The perfunctory.
Okay, yeah, the perfunctory page, as you call it, essentially. Okay, which is the one in the? Which one's not a light industrial project?
So the two on the far right are, the three on the left are kind of more of a light.
So the two on the far right with the numerous windows and or glass panels, those are that's light industrial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
No.
Not
You're fine. Again, I mean, he's more blunt than I am about it, but we're saying the same thing. I'm seeing your project.
These look awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
really
great.
impressed
These
by
are-
these.
yeah.
These look amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to have these in tech.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Why the other design?
So,
These are build-a-suits, and they're not all specifically. They do other things than just light distribution, like
Yeah.
we're proposing here.
yeah.
These are
So-
just example projects. A lot of our slides got removed, and we had just kind of what Skinell has developed and can develop. Some of those buildings are
Did you
not.
hear your word? What can be developed in this? And I mean, and obviously y'all you watch our council meetings, so you knew that coming in, this was going to be a tough road to hoe because you just know this council and how we discuss these things. And you've seen that we've actually, when we're talking about some of these projects, you've seen what's been done out there. I mean, there's been, honestly, I'm very impressed with what's that project that's at the corner of
Weisenbaker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks great. I mean, we had a long debate about that, and so but we also offered a lot of feedback into it, and so for us, I mean, it's a stark juxtaposition to say, okay, hey, this is some cool stuff we've done over here. This is what yours is going to look like. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it's just like some of these buildings that we're building specifically for a tenant, they're going to end up owning it, and there's automation going in. It just depends on the exact use, how big the buildings are.
So you're building it to the tenant's specifications.
That's right. So those are all build-a-suits.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Don't show us the good stuff, because that's not gonna work.
So
Yeah, you set a bar.
So really, what we're proposing this evening is just the approval of the three buildings. If there's additional architectural features you'd like, we'd be happy to take your feedback. If there's materials you like,
What is the building going to look like? The buildings that you're
If you-
proposing, are they, is
It-
that what you're
That's the
proposing?
rendering of the building.
so that has. If I can point out some features of that building, this building has some articulation, variation in colors, materials. That articulation is meant to cast shade on the building so it doesn't appear so large. Then you also have quite a substantial amount of storefront glazing, which is that glass in the front.
So this may or may not be what it ultimately looks like.
This
No,
is
sir.
what we've
So-
This is
designed.
what it's
This is
going to look
exactly
like.
what it's gonna look like.
Yes. More or less, there may be some small window changes, but this is what our architect has designed for this project.
Mayor, can we go to executive session? Feedback from our attorney. Thank you.
Yeah, we're in executive session.
We got a legal question.
We're back from executive session. No action was taken.
All right, where were we?
You may proceed with your presentation.
So I believe we left off at site constraints.
Yes.
Talking about the LCRA easement and the improvements we're allowed to place in there. Additional site constraints are just the topography of the site. Generally, our our stormwater flows to the northeast and actually around the backside of Building 3. So adjusting to that topography and placing these large structures with the recessed loading docks in a way that minimizes the impact on the site has dictated a lot of what we're doing on the site.
So
Certainly-
with the drainage, where's are you guys going to have a pond or is it off-site detention?
Yes, sir. You can see it, and there's some of the shading here north of Building 3.
Okay,
You can see a triangular shaped.
and that's your
detention pond called out.
stormwater detention.
Yes, sir. We're also passing through. We have some off-site stormwater coming from our south, and that will be routed around Building 3 to a culvert underneath SH-130.
Gotcha.
That's the area south of Building 3. Then the building, the triangle that's north of Building 3, that's empty, what's going on with that?
That's
That'll be our detention pond.
Oh, that's your detention.
Yes, sir.
pond.
Yeah,
And
the
on
drainage
south
runs
side, you
north
also
here.
have some water.
Yes, sir. But we don't have to detain it. We just simply have to allow it to pass through our site. Correct.
And that grassy area to the left of Building 3 is, what are you doing
Between
with that?
Building 3 and Impact Way. That is just open space.
Okay.
Yes, sir. In the renderings you see on the bottom there, in rendering number 1 is an image taken from Impact Way, looking into our truck court, showing you the level screening there. That is our 3-foot berm with plantings on top. And then image 2 is looking out towards, from the truck court of Building 3, out towards the highway. So you can see how tall the screenings would be there. That is really our presentation,
That's
so
it.
we're happy to take any feedback you have.
Could you tell me? You mentioned topography, so you're familiar with topography. Do you happen to know, based on the elevation, what the elevation is of your site versus the main lanes adjacent?
It's been an awkward position. By the time you get to, if I could point here, the north end of our site, SH-130 is mostly at grade. It's slightly elevated from our property. But at the southern end of our property, SH-130 is an overpass coming down.
Okay.
The service road is at grade with our property, but the main lanes just depends on where you are. Either way, our site, that especially that truck court behind Building 3, will not be visible from the northbound lanes or the southbound lanes.
I think you lost me there.
So on the,
You said it's an overpass towards the south, so vehicles approaching from the south, northbound on the road, they would have a pretty good view of the property if it's below the highway grade.
it's not going to be in their immediate view. You would have to look hard right.
It's not what my map looked like, but
So how many employees are forecast for these buildings here? I'm looking at your parking. I don't know if that's sufficient parking or not. I'm sure it is.
Charles can talk to the ratio at which we park at, which is industry standard. But right now, we do not have any users identified for these buildings. But again, Charles can speak to potential tenants.
Correct.
Wait. So I thought the mayor had asked you if you designed this specific building to
For the tenant.
Yeah, for the tenant. But you said that you didn't have any specific users in mind.
So that building is what is designed here to build speculatively. However, if Scannell does receive a request to build a suite on the site, they would tailor a new architectural design to that tenant.
So this is not necessarily what we may be looking at the end of the
Correct.
trail. Okay.
Just to clarify, this site plan is what we currently have in design and what we're pushing forward in design to build.
Okay.
There's a scenario of somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I want to take all of Building 3, and I want to make these slight modifications." We would do it, but we're working with the site constraints that we're dealt, and this is what we're designing to build.
So,
Okay.
so you're
And
telling
this
me
is what our financing is based on.
you're moving forward with this. The house is going to be under construction, but if someone comes in, they can choose the tile and the
You got
cabinets.
it.
Absolutely.
And if they come on early enough, we can make some. Yep.
Make minor changes to
Yeah.
the articulation if it's in time.
Yes, sir.
Put in a new set of fans.
Yeah. You can use
Okay.
stone instead of brick. And whatever.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anybody from the public here wishing to make any comment on this? Okay. So I'll ask council to make a motion to close.
Move to close the public hearing.
Have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. And motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
one-
much.
One more question for Jeremy. This is both. I'm sorry. This is both public hearing and ordinance first reading, right?
Right.
Thank you very much.
The SUP is because it's a light industrial and office warehouse. That's what mandates the.
That's
what
correct.
what is allowed by right on the property?
For CL4,
For sale.
there's retail, restaurants, general commercial. Yeah, there's a large.
A lot of things,
large
but not
variety.
light industrial, not
That's
office
correct.
warehouse.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay. I need a motion.
Move to approve the ordinance as presented.
I'll second that.
Now, council, if this ordinance is denied, the applicant has to start over again, just for your information.
Okay.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Mr. Ruiz? Oh, you're pondering over there? Okay. Sorry. This is first reading. Okay, hold on. All right. Have 4 nays and 3 yeas, so motion failed. Jeremy, what's the next option for the applicant here?
I can go back and have conversations with them. They would come back and revisit their project and then come back through the process for a specific use permit again if they wanted to move forward.
I would highly encourage them to sit down with
Okay.
staff again and have a conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, our next item is 6A, presentation and submission of the 2023 Racial Profiling Data Report to the City of Pflugerville as required by Texas Statute Code of Criminal Procedure, Chapter 2, General Duties of Officers, Article 2.132, Law Enforcement on Racial Profiling. Chief?
Good morning, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about our racial profile data per the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. I have with me Dr. Eric Fritsch. He is a doctor at the University of North Texas, and he'll be here to talk to you all about the findings.
Thank you. All right.
Greetings, Dr. Frisch.
Howdy. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm going to kind of walk through the racial profiling analysis that we do for Pflugerville Police Department, and just kind of take a step back before I begin is how we got here. So in 2001, the state of Texas enacted what is just commonly referred to as the Texas Racial Profiling Law. And in that law, each traffic stop that is conducted by a police officer in the state, that officer must document certain factors in regards to that stop. It started out with about 6 things, now it's about 15. But basically it's the reason for the stop, location of the stop, what happened in result of the stop, was a ticket given, a citation, a warning, etc. Was there a search conducted? If there was a search, what type of search? So a whole smattering of information is collected, along with the person's race, ethnicity, and the person's gender. And so that has evolved over time over the past 20 plus years. And part of that process is what is referred to as annual reporting. So, Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, enacted by the Texas legislature, set out the racial profiling law and the standards, and then the implementation of those standards is given to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, what you may hear me refer to as TCOL. That's the licensing and training body for law enforcement agencies in this state. So the first thing we do when we get information from an agency is this is calendar year data. So at the beginning of January of 2024, we're looking at 2023 data. And we want to make sure that the agency is in compliance with the Texas racial profiling law. That includes such things as having a policy, includes such things as having training education for their officers, having a policy in place that allows for complaints, public education about regarding the complaint process, etc. Most of what is done in racial profiling under the law is data collection. So that's where we'll spend almost all of our time.
Wait, let me. First of all, it's good to have you here. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
And it's good because we can ask you the questions.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I think needs to be pointed out, which I think is important, is that it's required by the law for departments to do this, but not all departments in the state of Texas are doing this, correct?
All departments have to report to TCOL, and that is entering their raw numbers into a system that TCOL operates. That is required. It is my understanding that in 2021 was the first time every agency, there's like 2,200 in the state, every agency actually reported. Now only a subset of agencies use outside people to do an independent analysis of their data.
And that can include just as a simple spreadsheet, Excel sheet that has information that may not necessarily be the best way to deliver the data to TCOL, as opposed to what we're doing here with the Pflugerville Police Department, which is in fact in-depth analysis and working for that. Is that
True.
correct?
Yeah. So TCOL is just going to require basically the raw data. So number of searches of black motorists, and then they input that data, and all of it has to add up, and that's really what the TCOL reporting process is.
Now, what's the teeth mechanism to make sure there's compliance in this?
If you do not file your report with TCOL, you can be subject to a $5,000 fine.
$5,000 fine, one-time fine for every day missed.
Annual. Yeah, and that's done by TCOL. TCOL's the enforcement arm also. They're the implementation side, but they're also the enforcement side.
Have there been some departments that just take the $5,000 fine and report?
It's my understanding starting in 2021, some have been fined $5,000, and then those agencies, I would estimate about 15 of them started to report.
So you pay it until you're willing to start the report?
Yes, because it's due every year. It's due March 1.
Yeah.
March 1 every year. Yes. So part of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, what it does is, as it mentioned, it sets the standards. Part of what it does is it sets out the analysis that needs to be done. And so what you'll see in these slides is what's referred to as the comparative analysis, because under the law, it specifies this is the analysis that is supposed to be done. The first comparative analysis is supposed to be done under the law, is presented in this slide, and basically that is the number of stops that were conducted, broken down by race, ethnicity, which is what's presented here. So the Hispanic motorists were the most likely to be stopped in 2023, followed by whites, blacks, Asian, Pacific Islanders, and then Alaska Native American Indian. Since there was only 6 of those, the American Indian Alaska Native group is not pushed forward in this analysis. It's included in the chart in the report, but it is not in the analysis because there's only 6 of them, and then slicing them by searches and stuff, there's a lot of zeros.
What's the threshold for that level? Because obviously you're saying 6 is.
Yeah, I mean, any cell, so an individual cell like black motorists searched by probable cause, from an analysis standpoint, you want 30 inside that cell.
You say 30?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Now, it can be less, but I mean, that's the general threshold.
Cool.
Yeah. And then if it's 4 factors, that ends up being 120 actions. Okay. So then the next thing that we do is we compare those stops, turn them into percentages, and then compare it to your population. This is required by TCOL. So TCOL sets the implementation. They're the ones that said what we need to do with setting a benchmark is we're going to use your population. And so there's 6 or 7 benchmarks that are used in the research on racial profiling. None of them are good. None of them are valid. These are all external benchmarks. The only quality that's out there is what's referred to as internal benchmarks, which we can talk about later if you want to. But external benchmarks, we use the population. And so
And that population is based on the 2020 census.
Yes. Yes.
And this population, you list the percentage population for the city, but also the county.
Mm-hmm.
We straddle county lines. Which county do you use? Do you use both Williamson and Travis, or do you only use one or the other?
This is Williamson.
This
You
is
use
Williamson,
Williamson.
not Travis.
You mean Travis?
It's Travis.
I
We're-
don't know.
we're-
Those numbers
we're
don't
asking-
really look like Travis to me.
That
And we're 98% in Travis.
98% in Travis.
I would say we're yeah.
We're pretty
About
close.
a-
We're pretty
You
close.
got
So like
100.
97,
three,
98%
three.
Travis.
Yeah. So I am concerned that those could be Williamson County numbers
That's
because
the-
frankly they kind of look like Williamson County
That's
numbers.
the first thing that popped in my head
Yeah.
when I saw that. That's why I.
Yeah, can we validate that?
Yes.
My quick response is, I don't know,
Mhm.
because I don't do this chart. I don't compare it to the population.
So-
Chad does. So there's 2 of us on the report. He does that. When we know that an agency is in 2 jurisdictions, we use both. So like when we do Midland, it's both Midland County and then the other little piece they have, Wiley, Texas. They're in 3 counties. They're in Dallas, Denton, and Collins. So we use all of them. So I'll check with him. I just don't.
Well,
know.
then
I
I'm
imagine that's
confused. I'm
Grayson,
confused by your
not
initial
Denton.
answer. Then your initial answer was Williamson.
I thought it was Williamson because that's where I thought this was.
Okay, wait. Okay, so maybe a better question for me is that you didn't know we straddled
Where I'm
2
standing?
counties. You didn't know. Yeah, you didn't know we straddled 2 counties.
I did not know.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
I've never been told that.
Okay, that's
And that's not uncommon. I mean, we did Midland for probably 8 years before they wanted us to include the other county because it's usually just little pieces of a county that they have. And so I will check with Chad and find out which one we're using. Preference, obviously.
So-
is
so let me
Travis,
ask,
but include both.
I'm sure there's a valid reason for this, and maybe I don't see it, is why is population even significant here?
Because it's required to compare it to a benchmark by law.
Okay, so,
And there's not a good external benchmark. And so the most common thing, because it's easily accessible, is going to be population.
but it doesn't tell me anything
It
because
does not.
the percentage of total stops could be 50% of those people are just driving through town. It
I
has
can
nothing-
put Nueces County on there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just numbers.
so I guess it doesn't matter what county we're in, so.
Well,
So we'll get the
we
numbers
should
right.
expect there to be some correlation. There may not be causation there, but we should expect some sort of statistical significance to the population of the people in the area to the population of people who are stopped by police.
But you,
I mean, that's,
you hope so.
it's
But-
not an exact science, and I know there are tons of disclaimers in the
Yeah.
report that say that, but we should still expect there to be,
About-
unless we can start tracking, mileage per person, number of car trips per person. Obviously, we're not going that deep, but we should expect some correlation to population.
The hard part is this: is that you're stuck with a formula
Yeah.
that the ledge put together, and as I haven't seen them being SMEs on this specific subject right here. So you're just like you said, there's not a good external benchmark.
But there is. I
But-
mean, why don't you just ask Google? Right? They know who's driving, and they know all the data about who's driving in our city limits, and you can geofence it. I disagree. I think that the data is available. I think that either the ledge has designed it in such a way that the reporting doesn't require it.
What? No way. That'd be shocking.
It is, but and every year we had the same
Yeah.
discussion about
Mhm.
how we can't get a good benchmark about this, and I'm getting a little wore out about it. I mean, I understand your predicament. Don't get me wrong, but we know the data exists, right? My phone's eavesdropping on me right now, and it knows that I'm an old white guy sitting here in a council chamber, and it knows my income bracket, and it knows what job profile I fit into, and it knows what kind of beer I prefer, right? The data exists, and to say it doesn't exist is misinformation, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and like he said, I mean, we're glad to have you here because I mean that does help with that, and you are the preeminent expert in this. I mean, we're clear about that. The frustration from our end, as you can see, is that we have this conversation over and over again, and we can't honestly tell the public if this is good or not because. And we're going to get feedback. Someone's going to see this and be like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on over here?" And then we can't tell them, "Well, statistically valid. Well, this is what the benchmark is, but we're not even saying this is the right data." Points right there. So how do we tell the public, "Hey, listen, we are doing good, or we're doing poorly on this"? That's the part from our standpoint. And I get it. You're stuck with what the ledge has put you with, which sucks on that. But it's just I feel like we have to add that caveat every year. And to what Councilmember McDonald says, he's absolutely right. It's what we don't want to know, which is frustrating because as a state, you would want people to be educated on everything and be cognizant and make decisions on sound science and sound facts and information. So it's not your fault.
And until
And let me just step back there when it is a little bit your fault because you don't know what county this is representing coming into a presentation. So
It's
I'm
not in our
going to
report.
put some of that on you.
No, I agree. I mean, I read the report before I came in, and I'm the one that produces the draft report, but I don't handle the data
Okay.
up front. And it's not marked whether it's Travis or Williamson, but I'll find out.
Well, I
Yep.
just pulled up the data from the Census Bureau, and these county population numbers, for some reason, what I've got is rounded to the whole percentage, but this matches the Travis County population number. What I've got here is 8% black, which I'm astonished that it's that low for Travis
county,
47% Anglo for the county, 7%
Because we're in Blueville.
Asian,
So it's rounded.
effectively
That's
0% Native American, or
Yeah.
1% Islander, and 33% Hispanic. Those numbers match pretty closely to the numbers here. for
And you
Travis
mentioned that
County.
Travis is
And
98%,
that's from.
He's tracking Travis.
but that's 98% of you have a
Yeah.
little piece
Yeah.
that's in there.
That's
97, 98.
censusreporter.org is the website that I pulled that off.
But we don't know, to your earlier point, we don't know if that's 98% of the drivers on our roads, right?
Well, no, we don't. And the Brazos ticket writers that the PD uses, they have a field in there for resident, non-resident. And of your stops in 2023, about 60%, really 57%, but I like round numbers, 60% of your stops were non-resident.
Non-resident. I knew you were going to say.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can chew on this all night
Wait,
long.
all right.
I tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean that's really the issue. The top issue is the one with the base rates. We've covered that. The other issue is that even if we had the perfect external benchmark, when you talk about stops, the officers don't know the race ethnicity of the person they're stopping prior to the stop. We've been collecting that information in the state since 1999. It's consistent. Statewide average is 2%. It ranges from about 1.5% to 3.5% each year. You're sitting at a little over 0.5%.
So
So
in
even if we
essence,
could compare it to who we actually, if we were to compare it to something like a population, the officer still doesn't know the race ethnicity. Why that's important is because racial profiling is defined in law as taking action based
While
upon a
going
person's
in.
race.
So
not
let me
their
let me
actions.
ask that question because that doesn't add up for me. You said in only 51 cases
Mm-hmm.
did the officer know the ethnicity of the individual before stopping them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the reasons for the stop, we've got 78 times that it was a pre-existing knowledge of why they needed. They already knew who was in the car in 78 cases But they didn't know the ethnicity of the person
They
in
may not have
51
known
people?
the person in the car. It could have been like a suspicious vehicle. So a vehicle comes out of 7-Eleven. It's a red pickup truck. It's 3 o'clock at night. Officer 5 blocks down sees a red truck, stops that truck based upon what's referred to as reasonable suspicion, not a traffic stop by traffic code, but a reasonable suspicion. They wouldn't know that.
Define pre-existing knowledge for me.
That they believe that the vehicle, either the person in the vehicle or the vehicle, has been involved in some kind of criminal activity.
So you're
does the person have a warrant? Is the person driving without a suspended license?
But
Is
in
it a
that case, they would
suspicious
know the
vehicle?
person.
Not on a
Not
suspicious
always.
vehicle.
Maybe I borrowed your car.
Yeah, because I was trying to think of myself. What you're saying is that in those instances that the license registration, that they may have something may be furtive about that. Yeah, you're right.
Do you have
That may be a
LPRs?
better question as the
Do you have
chief.
do you have LPRs?
This is also for flock hits. So pre-existing knowledge that there is a wanted person in the car, that is a flock hit that comes through that notifies our officers, and now they're stopping this vehicle.
So is every flock hit a pre-existing knowledge?
I think so.
I don't know.
Because I think we had a lot more than 78 flock hits.
Oh no, we had more, but I don't know how they. And I'd have to look into how they actually classified that. But that would be pre-existing knowledge. It would also be when our narcotics are working a case, and they know that the person that they're looking to get their narcotics from is driving this certain car. So they'll see that vehicle, and that's pre-existing knowledge.
So that's pre-existing.
And so that's where the fact that there are 50% more pre-existing knowledge than knowledge of the ethnicity of the individual doesn't really seem very legitimate to me.
I would just offer from a number standpoint, it's less than 100 out of almost 8,000 stops.
Yeah, but you can always learn something from it. That's why.
No, I get it. I mean, yeah. I mean, but it's the least likely reason why someone's going to.
How does this compare to other cities with their flood data and their analysis?
With their what?
so that percentage, how does that compare to other cities?
The 0.58?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I have not experienced, and we're talking hundreds of reports, anything over 4% ever.
Is this
In 20 years.
0.58, is that on the low end?
No, because
No,
the
'cause he
range,
said-
like the reasonable, so the average is 2%. The reasonable range, which I wrote down, is
So it's a quarter of the average.
0 to 6%. 0 to 6% is one standard deviation.
Okay.
0.6 or
0 to
0.06?
No, 0, so none,
Okay.
to 6%
Okay.
is one standard
It's a
deviation.
single standard deviation?
Interesting.
How do you, but,
The average.
the standard
Don't ask me
deviation
math
can't
questions.
stop
No,
at
no,
the
no.
axis.
When that range was when that range was calculated, the average was 2.9.
The average was 2.9, and you're
And the
telling me
range was
one
0 to
standard
6.
deviation is
0 to 6.
3 on either side.
0 to 6.
But
So what's
The data that was run, but
there
the
have to
most
be
recent
outliers
data-
beyond the standard deviation, so the standard deviation can't stop at the axis. The standard deviation can't terminate at 0.
what's the highest number?
Yeah,
you've
what's the
seen?
highest and what's the lowest? The lowest is 0. That can't be within one standard deviation.
Well-
Now, I didn't major in math, but I know a little bit about it.
And you said 4. Okay. Well,
I mean, I'd have to look at the data to know what the highest was. I would just say it's very common. Again, like I said, I don't normally see anything over 4%.
Okay.
do you normally get these questions from the city council?
Sometimes
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out because we do we
I get a lot of that number can't be actual true. Because a lot of people think that officers will know the race ethnicity. So I get a lot of discussion around that.
Well, and I'm sure there's a question of with how much certainty does an officer report that number. If I see someone coming down the street and I hit them with radar and I can look through their window, maybe I do, maybe I don't. At what point in time do I think I know, and at what time am I certain? So
Yeah.
And what
It does
incentivizes
feel
and
artificially low.
what incentivizes them to say they did? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no incentive.
It is self-reported. It is a self-reported number.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't.
All this is
Yeah.
done by the
Mhm.
officer
Yeah.
at the traffic stop.
So I mean,
And they
that's
can't clear the traffic stop unless it's coded in.
Yeah, I think my biggest frustration here is that we're checking a state box here. We went through this
Well, yeah,
process
we
so
do
we can
this
check a
every
box
year,
for the
yeah.
state.
And every year we're going to hear about this report. This is a report we hear about every year from our citizens on right here. And this is the problem. We're asking these questions because likely they're not going to. What did Serena say? 6 people who watch our meetings. They're likely not going to watch our meetings. But these are the questions that we're asking because we want to make sure when we point them back here, we're saying, hey, listen, no, this is why we're saying even with this data, we can't give you a good analysis regarding
And
what's
so
happening.
where we go in this, where this is going, but where we go and where the research has gone is to not focus on the stop part, but to focus on the post stop. So the officers approached the vehicle and they identified the individual.
So what are the actions done?
What we call
subsequent to it?
post stop
Okay.
outcomes, which is what actually the second comparative analysis is. So ideally the first one could go away, but it's not. The second one is
Royce West will not
more
let you get that
important and
go
can
away.
answer some questions for us, like what happens to a person after they're stopped.
Is there disparate treatment regarding the people at
Right.
post stop?
And so what we have here is what's referred to as comparative analysis 2, but basically it says what were the outcomes of the stops broken down by race, ethnicity. So when a person is stopped, one of 3 things is going to occur. They're going to get a warning. Almost always here it's a written warning. You have a few verbal warnings, but almost always it's a written warning. If there's going to be a warning, it's written. A citation or an arrest.
So do our written warnings column encompass verbal warnings?
Yes. Oh, no.
Okay.
I got what you're saying. No.
Okay.
There was 71 of them. Not to get into under hundreds, but that's just kind of like, okay, I move that to the side. I did not find it because it's technically separate category. So about 2/3 of your stops result in a written warning. So that, to me, that's a question that can be answered with this data. And it's a good question: is how are citizens generally treated when during a traffic stop? Everybody wants a warning. So about 2/3 of the time, I get a warning. That's a good thing. But what it tells me is that traffic enforcement in Pflugerville PD, again, clearly just driving in today from the Dallas area and going back. So not knowing much about Pflugerville PD, for traffic enforcement for them is more about education, compliance, rather than enforcement and sanctions.
How does that
That's what it
compare
tells me.
to where you live
That's pretty high.
in Denton, Texas?
That's pretty. When you say 2/3, that's about
That's
the max
high.
I ever see.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is. Now I see 80% citations. I won't name names. I see them, but about 2/3, that's about as high as I see.
Okay.
And that, to me, that's good. Because we can correct behavior without giving a citation. So what this is then it's basically a column percentage. So
And Eric, real quick, do you have the previous years too?
not with me, no, but
Okay,
we've
well,
done the
because I was
past
going to ask
2
you about the
years.
trend on that, because what would be interesting to see, given that trend, is that our officers do emphasize, rather have self-compliance than actually punitive action on these things. It would be interesting to see if that has maintained through the years, with that. So consequently, hey, listen, anyone who understands that we're coming in here, this is what's happening.
Yeah, I would just say, just from a rough standpoint, without the numbers in front of me from last year, because we always look at last year's when we're doing this year's, is very consistent.
Okay.
But also that's pretty normal for an agency. There's not usually vast fluctuations, and I would say that we've done it for 3 years, so I'd have to look at the prior year.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question. Do we have any data that tells us, are we getting an equal amount of compliance by our high level of warnings, low level of tickets, compared to an agency that has a high level of tickets and a low level of warnings? Is there a difference in the compliance by the driving population afterwards?
I don't know of any research that's ever been done at that. I'm trying to figure out, just thinking about how to go about doing that from a reliable and valid way of being able to determine compliance based on
Maybe
You
safe.
could do that
sanction.
if
It'd have to
you-
be
if-
something inside of our
Yeah, you could do
databases.
that if you recorded well, obviously record the written warnings or whatever, and hoping that there'll be compliance, but then you'd have to keep a record of those drivers and follow them.
Track them over
for-
time, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking if you set up a speed camera on the toll road, and you have X percentage of drivers that are speeding, and then you set up a equivalent speed camera on the North Dallas Tollway. X percentage of drivers that are speeding. One of them has a 20% citation rate, one of them has an 80% citation rate. Do you have more speeders in one than the other? I'm just
It's a good
curious
question. No, it's a good question. I just don't have anybody that's
how
done
that
research
affects
on that.
behavior.
Yeah. So what this shows on the column side is that it's within race. So basically what you can just read it across. What happened with white motorists, 72% received a written warning, 24% received a citation, 3% were arrested. And so it's within column. So the other thing that we have, I mean, we obviously have the reason for the stop, but when it comes to arrests, we know why people are arrested. There are categories of arrest. There's 4 different categories. Here, about 2/3, the arrests are based on a violation of the penal code, which basically means the person committed a criminal offense and the officer had probable cause to make an arrest. And that's then the next is outstanding warrant. Those are the 2 most common categories out of the 4 that we see throughout the state. It's just that sometimes those are switched. So outstanding warrant occurs
So
more
that-
often than
So that's
a
interesting.
violation.
So you're not saying it's a motor vehicle violation. It's that led to something that would be arrestable, but in fact it's a violation of the penal code or outstanding arrest with that as well. So
Yeah, so you had
interesting.
350 arrests. Let me look at the report.
But they're not
So
stopping.
the 12 arrests
and-
for violation of traffic law, that's
And
got to
that-
be
that's
pretty.
the 12.
That's got to be pretty egregious to get arrested
Yes.
for a traffic violation.
And that's
Yes.
what
So
I like to know is about
significantly excessive speeding could end up in somebody being arrested.
What do you consider significant
That's
excessive
100
speeding?
plus.
Well, you actually
The
have
Doug Weiss Club.
You're in a school.
Hey,
You actually
come on.
you're
Hey, Chief.
My
Yeah.
son was stopped doing 99 in a 55, and they could have got him for excessive speed, and he could have been arrested for that.
Did he
I'm
get
sorry
a
I had to
warning?
bring that up, but he got a citation and he was fined very
And I imagine you got a little
Very
more than that too.
very heavily. But that would be one where you were excessive.
Say, excessive, so double or
Correct.
more than 25
Yeah.
over. I don't
Yes,
know
sir.
what the limit is there.
Uh,
But
one thing.
But violation of penal code, help me understand the violation of penal code, because that is the majority. That's 238 out of whatever it was, 350-ish, 351. That is typically incident to search or a plain view offense. That's the officer pulled someone over for a traffic violation and discovered something else.
Well, the arrest and the search are separate. So the arrest is about whatever the criminal violation was, and just based upon your searches. But my guess would be here is that they are probably drug or alcohol related.
Because
A white person
even your
is
search,
arrested.
even your search is conducted. I mean, white 145, black 225, Hispanic 174, 14.6. Did you see anything statistically? I mean, to me, 225 versus 145 is interesting.
On the where are you?
Search conducted. Your report page.
I got you. Yeah, just the total number.
Yeah.
I've got a slide on that. We'll show it to you because that's
Okay.
the next part. Is that there's the stop, and that may result. Basically, when it comes to violation of the penal code, it really should sell the health and safety code too, because that's where the drugs are stuck in our law.
Okay.
But there's only so much room in the little slide there. But it's usually going to be drug related, probably, or it's going to be
Open
alcohol
container.
related, open container, something like that. And then on the one of the things that is, it's a best practice. I actually don't see it a lot in all of our agencies, but you have a uniform traffic enforcement SOP, which basically is a guided discretion SOP that gives officers guidance on what excessive means. On somebody runs through a stop
We
sign.
have that written.
Huh? You do. Uniform
Interesting.
traffic enforcement, and then
That
the
takes it takes out the subjectivity.
no, it's good. It's good.
It's guidelines though.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
guidelines.
policy.
But then it is up to the supervisor to then monitor that. But it's, if you roll through a stop sign versus run through a stop sign, it's the same violation. But probably one of them is going to be the guided discretion thing says probably warn for this. The flying through it, cite for that.
So,
and again, it's not like it's required, but that's
but
giving
here's what
guidance to
interesting. We have an SOP on that. TCOL obviously is a standard that credentials and oversees theoretically law enforcement in this state. They obviously have a practice of procedures that go with that. How much does our SOPs deviate from that, come from that, or was that something you're saying originally come from there as well? Because you said you noted how unique and rare that is. But my impression would be TCOL would have best practices, which would actually enumerate how to go about those different instances.
Right. But actually, on this side, best practices come more from DPS on the traffic enforcement side about how to handle it, because the idea behind these SOPs is to then create consistency in how people similarly situated, which means they're committing the offense, same time of day, etc., than treated.
I
They're
like
more on that
I
than
like
TCOL.
that because
No,
I think you guys might have taken a different one. It's the subjectivity, because you want to be able to have a reliable rubric that somebody can say, hey, listen, this is why I took this action, because officers have such broad discretion.
Right.
You want to be able to show, hey, listen, no, this is why an officer took this
So
action.
UPS has a similar SOP, and we have something that's not exactly like theirs, but
I haven't
along
looked
the
at.
lines, or?
I did the racial profiling study for DPS, and that was 6-7 years ago. So what they have today, I can't speak to because I haven't kept up with them. But when it comes to kind of traffic enforcement, they're the best practices side. That's what they do. That's what DPS is. They're largely a traffic enforcement entity.
Chief, could you speak to the SOP, how that was developed, and who we copied, or we brand new?
The SOP was in place when I got here, but I did go through it. But what we wanted to do is to make sure that because if there's so much of a discretion between officers, right? So if there's someone with not a valid driver's license, they're automatically getting a cite per our SOP. And we just wanted to make that for this reason, right? For the racial profiling, to make sure that everyone across the board that our officers pulled over was being treated the same. And it wasn't, we had this group of officers that always let someone go for a valid DL, but then these group of officers always wrote that cite for the no valid DL. So now by standardizing it, everyone across our PD does the same, and we cannot be accused of doing something for one and not the other.
And I think one of the things we've discussed here in the past on these types of reports is the numbers may or may not have any meaning that we can pull from it. But for you, Chief, if you see sort of this homogeneous line of everyone's got the same bad number, but this one person has a number that's out of whack, well, that then gives you something to focus on and go follow up with and do a more qualitative analysis.
Yes, sir. And our command staff deep dives every month off of each officer and who they say they're searching, right? And we look at probable cause searches because I think that's where that accusation will come in, right? I was searched because I was white, black, Hispanic, whatever it may be. So our command staff looks every month, and we take all of Jason O'Malley's probable cause searches. Who is he searching? Meaning, what race is he searching? And then is he finding those items that he says I'm searching for, right? Probable cause. Probable cause is probably the biggest thing that a police officer has to do their job. So if I have an officer, and when we look monthly, if Jason O'Malley only pulls over Hispanic or only probable cause searches Hispanic officers, but yet I never find anything, well, that's a red flag for us. And so that's what we're looking for is those anomalies, like you said, that something that jumps out that says, well, why is he only searching black officers or black motorists but never finding anything? So I just, and I don't know if Doc will go into this, but hit rate, right? Hit rate is something that we look at here at PD and I think is very big. And what hit rate is how many probable cause searches did you do and how many times did you find contraband? We, as an agency, are at about 79% for a hit rate. That means, in my opinion, that our officers are well trained. And if they're going to take you out of your car for a probable cause search, 79% of the time, they're right. And if we look across all of the races, like, so we're at 79, we're at 77 point something percent for black motorists. So if they probable cause search a black motorist, 78% of the time, they're right. I think that's the training that we give here at PD, the training, I mean, the training budget that we have, that we're sending these officers, we're constantly making sure that they are doing the right thing and they're getting the proper training. And that hit rate at 79%, I'm telling you, what is the national average on hit rate?
Hit rate in the state is 45%.
We're at 79. So that means if our officers are taking you out of the car, they're right 80% of the time. So we fall back on that as a command staff too, knowing that our officers aren't just willy-nilly stopping people and saying, hey, get out the car. We have probable cause to search.
And I just want to take a moment to underscore this, just in terms of, we're asking a lot of questions and giving Eric a lot of grief over some of his numbers.
It's all good.
And that's part of what we do. But I also want to take a moment to recognize that I think uniformly this body has often commented on and commended the work that your command staff and all of our officers do on a day-to-day. And we are very appreciative of you, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I know our officers do as well.
Free cookies.
I thought.
Right.
Free
Right
cookies.
here.
I thought.
Mayor said it.
More cookies.
I thought David was supposed to say this.
Sorry. I was waiting for it.
No, so I think what we hear, and I'll probably reiterate some of that, but what we're hearing is, as our officers are pulling people over, they're not doing it in a racially motivated manner. They're pulling over people for violations of law without knowing the race of the driver. When they choose to search someone, they're doing it for what seems to be the right reasons, getting a very high success rate with finding contraband. I think what worries me, and so that tells me the story that our police department is doing a great job, and I'm really excited about that. I'm really happy about that. What frustrates me is that when we see that black motorists are pulled over 10% fewer times than white motorists, despite the population, but still, they're pulled over 10% fewer times, roughly. But they're searched 60% more times than the white motorists. That tells me there's a statistically significant problem here. It may not be with our police department. It might be more culturally or institutionally. But why are we searching certain populations so disproportionately?
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'll
You
I mean, I
just
tell-
stepped on a landmine.
no, I
know,
really
absolutely.
wanna walk away from that.
No. I don't think so.
I don't either. I just think that this is what I think the data would bear out. I don't have the data for this department, that level of raw data. My speculation, based on other research, is the difference in the smell of marijuana at the traffic stop.
I will tell you over and over again. There's a. I don't think of a way to put this. There's a frustration that there are other factors that come into play when, in fact, after. And that's why Serena makes a good point about what happens after the stop, right? What's happening after the stop and in the interactions, you said cultures, certain other aspects that occur with that. And that plays itself out in a lot of different ways, because even if you're talking about outstanding warrants or some of these violations, are black people being prosecuted at a higher rate or a different rate than their white compatriots? Yes, that's the thing. And that is not something that has to do with law enforcement. It has to do with the other different factors that come into the aspect from there. But what happens is that you get those percentages that you get right there. And you're like, hey, wait a minute, how's this happening? How's this population that is so minute as compared to the the rest of the population, even in our own county over here, being affected disproportionately from that? And that's the discussion that your numbers can't answer, but it's a frustration for people. Not just people, I was get annoyed when people just try to say this is a black or Hispanic thing. No, this is a people thing. This is an American thing. Saying, well, why is that happening? What's going on from that as well? And that really does bounce to what you look at when you look at the what's happening regarding in the courts and the systems, justice, and this is why you don't want early on you tell kids don't get caught up in the system, because they'll have reasons that you'll be in the system for the rest of your life if you're going to do that so well. And it's a frustrating thing to see, because I agree with you. It's frustrating to see that aspect, but you also see what they're doing it on, and then you think to yourself, well, that has nothing to do with law enforcement. This all happened before law enforcement. The penal code violations and the outstanding warrants. And so, what's happening with that? But no, I think it's a fair question. You said it's a landmine. No, that's a question we've been asking for a long time.
And you mentioned, the aroma of marijuana, but statistically, white and black populations dead even on use of the drug.
Yeah, I would say differentials on the arrests, on the search and arrest side.
Yeah,
yes,
but
not on the use side.
Correct.
And which then,
So disproportionate arrest cycle, even though commensurate use patterns.
and I would say this.
Now,
just
granted,
from
I'm sorry. I know your doctorate is criminal justice, criminology.
criminal justice.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's the guy.
I feel like
for the state.
I feel like I need someone with more math and statistics background to help me understand the statistical significance that we're seeing here. Because from a criminology perspective, criminal justice perspective, this is all. I'm going to use the word legitimate. This is all exactly within the boundaries that we expect. But statistically, the question is, why should we expect that?
And we continue to see a disproportionate execution of things. I mean, it goes back to cocaine and crack in the 80s, and you saw. You saw
the disproportionate
literally. Yeah, you're
prosecution.
like, wait a minute, what's going on here? How can this law be so more enforced over here, but it's not happening over here? Same. And to be fair to, that's been fixed. From a legal standpoint. But to your point, that disproportionate aspect and disparate impact and how that's being executed is a frustrating thing over and over again. It's the reason why we tell our kids, you got to do things 10 times better and straight up and act right, because statistically speaking, to your statistics, you're more likely to be prosecuted, get in trouble for that than your white compatriots on that.
And this is. We're doing the next slide. But
It's beyond the
That is-
scope
no,
of
it
this
is.
report.
I mean,
yes.
this is all search stuff. So this
Uh-huh.
exactly what the chief said with the hit rate. I mean, it's the same basic information. I'll talk about consent searches in a minute. But from a criminal justice standpoint, I would say this: if there's any concern in Pflugerville regarding this, is that there's safeguards in place in our justice system for this, because with an 80% hit rate, these searches aren't being hidden. The person is either being arrested, which is documented in the report. Definitely the evidence is being seized. It's not like there's giving back. And then there's a search report done. And then that is reviewed by the sergeant, internal, but it also goes into the court system for arrests and stuff. So judges prosecutors, all those people should be looking at, was there probable cause? Because probable cause, we could legally define it now, but probable cause is developed by the officer, unless there's a warrant, and then it is checked throughout our system. And so there would be practices in place in Pflugerville to be able to see if that is an issue of searches based upon marijuana that weren't good, or searches based upon probable cause that weren't good. And I'm just picking on marijuana because almost all the drugs seized, 92% of them were
Marijuana.
almost all the contraband seized was marijuana, was drugs, which most commonly it's marijuana. So that's why I'm picking on that one.
And Chief, what amount of marijuana do we arrest on? Because I know it's also a ticketed offense over here too as well.
It's an open-ended question because there are people that, I mean, so I'm going to go back real quick to our 2/3 of written warnings. We have a high rate of written warnings because we believe to not put someone into the system. Like I said, I brought up an incident with my son, right? That hefty fine that we did pay, right? Some people don't have that, and so that's the reason why we would rather get voluntary compliance as opposed to write that site. So the same comes with the marijuana, right? If it's a person that we know or we've dealt with in the past that we know is not a very good person, or that we know might have been dealing drugs in the city or whatnot, we'll arrest you on the least amount we can. But if it's just the average person that we come across, no, we're not. That's why it's hard for us to say what the minimal amount is, because I think our officers are really good, again, with voluntary compliance. We are not out there trying to just put people in jail.
Do
But
you?
might take, the second time you caught the same person, might be a different story.
It might be, and was the amount more? Was it greater than the last time? And was it personal use, right? We see a lot of that now in the news, personal use, even though it's still illegal technically in the state.
Do you confiscate the drugs,
We
the
do,
marijuana?
absolutely.
You take
We
them?
do. We confiscate it and we'll inventory it, and then I think twice a year we do a big burn. Not here. We take it down to Beaumont. We take it down to Beaumont and it's incinerated. I don't
Say
mean
take it down
That
to
sounds
Beaumont.
more
I'm sorry.
fun.
What is going on in Beaumont?
Wait, what I heard was not only do you burn it,
This
but
went
you road
wrong.
trip.
Specifically.
Wow.
our crime scene handles
Explore
that.
Pflugerville.
And Chief,
Is this a volunteer?
Just to clarify the contraband thing,
Jim wants
when
to ride along.
when you catch MIP, minors in possession of alcohol, you also confiscate that, isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Any sort of contraband.
Any sort of contraband.
You don't let them leave with.
No,
with anything
never.
illegal, no.
Never.
The third analysis is the search one, which we've kind of already been talking about. Just a couple things about this slide. What we look at is the percentage of searches, so the number of them. You're at 6.4% in 2023. Statewide average is 5.5, so you're right there. We look at the reason for the searches. We've had a pretty in-depth discussion about probable cause searches. The second most common reason for a search in this city is a search incident to arrest. And really, searches incident to arrest, they're not even designed to uncover evidence.
Because
So when we
it's incidental to the arrest itself.
it's like getting booked in
Yeah.
jail and your property
Yeah.
gets put. It's the same basic thing. It's for the safety of the officer and all that kind of stuff. But and so, just to clarify, the contraband discovered in 55% of all searches. That's all of them. And really, there's 5 categories. Search incident to arrest, not designed to discover evidence, and vehicle inventories are not either. And those are number 2 and number 4 on the most common. So that's overall the 55%. The other thing we look at, because this is where even 20 years ago, the most scrutiny regarding racial profiling practices were placed was on consent searches, because it's the officer's ability to be able to ask for permission to search a person, a vehicle, a house, whatever you want to give permission to. And so we monitor that. You have very few of them, 73 out of the 8,700 traffic stops. Less than 1% of all traffic stops are involve a consent search. Statewide average is 1.5%, so you're under that. The consent searches are the third most common search, so they just don't happen very often. So that's what we look at with searches. Last thing, it's really not a comparative analysis, an analysis, is we look at your complaints and then the disposition of those complaints. And in 2023, there were not any complaints for Pflugerville PD involving racial profiling on a traffic stop.
Were there complaints the year before? It seems to have
There was one.
I was going to say there was
Very
one.
small.
There was one,
One
sir. The year
complaint
before.
previously.
Yeah, the year before that, my first year here, there was 0.
My recollection is not
0,
sustained.
1, 0.
Yes, and not sustained. Can I just real quick? I want to throw something else out there too. When we talked about the policy that we have in place about when we cite, and some of the things that we do monthly, our sergeants are also required weekly to check body cams. So they are randomly going into each of the officers under their command, and they're looking at traffic stops. They're looking at how they treat people, what they're doing, and they're also looking at how they treat our residents on calls for service at their
So
house.
they randomly audit body
Each
cams.
officer every week, and they're logged, and so we have logs that we know that they were doing that. The second thing I want to add to that just real quick is when you all approved our new body cams for all that new technology, we also now can monitor their body cams by keywords. So now if they're on a traffic stop or on a scene, we enter in those keywords, and now their supervisors will get notified if anything out of the ordinary comes up that we tell it to monitor for, and that's just getting rolled out now. And we also then have the ability to go right to their body cams and see what they're seeing.
Is that for every officer?
Every officer
every
here.
shift? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was that new technology with our Axon body cams that we got.
So
and it
is there
transcribes.
a movement towards a standard script for officers? I mean, I would, because I wouldn't want you to search my body cam and for some word that I used. Or,
Yeah, we're looking for those trigger. We do have a list of trigger words that we do monitor for.
well, it might be there might be a word in there that possibly were triggered because of a confrontation or emotion or.
And then we'll know that by watching the body
And
cam
those
footage,
those trigger words are both the officer speaking as well as
the
individual.
citizen. Yes.
And we haven't had any issues with body cameras going off or not malfunctions or anything?
Not anymore, thanks to you all, honestly.
So I don't have a question, but I think I have a comment about this. It seemed like we go through this. This is the second time I think we've gone through the same process and questions and lack of answers and maybe a uncertainty of statistics and so forth. And I think this will be the same next year, Council. So my question to you is, what would you like for our consultant to specifically come back that's different than what we got today?
You're going to be in session next year. And I know that you I know I'm using the word again. He is the SME, though. He really is. He's one of the most respected voices on this in the state. You've heard our concerns. Mm-hmm. And I guess, was last year the first time you came here?
Yes.
Okay. So, to be fair, you're in the middle of session and you just got us. But now you've heard our concerns 2 years in a row. To Councilmember Rogers' point and McDonald, what are you doing to help shape that conversation? You talking to Senator? I mean, we can do it. We can talk to Senator West and some other people who are quite vocal advocates of these things. But you're the expert on here, and you understand our concern with the data or what it doesn't say. Are you conveying those things to them? Because I mean, at times it's like what Mayor Pro Tem, what Doug just said, is that like, okay, we're checking a box. And to be fair, there's a lot of people who just want to check that box. They're like, dang it, we have this. All right, let's just go ahead and check out the box. But absolutely, but you also have councils like ourselves that are very interested and invested in saying, truly, we want to have this something. We know we have a great police department. We want to be able to have stats actually verify and show that in a lot of different ways. Not something that is, for a better lack of term, kabuki theater in a lot of ways, because you just don't have good benchmarks. Are you going to speak? I mean, you know how the real work is done in the interim. Mm-hmm. Speak to them about, hey, listen, these are things that I'd like to see tweaked. Or maybe a better question to ask you is this: what would you want tweaked to better see, to better ascertain, and have a better formula or a report in place for people to understand and rely on?
That hasn't, because I might have mentioned it last year, but that response has not changed in 20 years. What we need, and actually it's pretty fortuitous you asked that question because I got a meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow to discuss what is referred to as peer-to-peer analysis. That's where we need to go. That's where we were trying to go 20 years ago. We knew we needed to be there. We still need to be there. And what that does, it's basically what the chief was referring to. It's just that then someone on the outside gets the data and does an independent analysis. And basically what you do, let's say it's night shift officers, you take all the night shift officers and you compare one to the aggregate and see if they're behaving any differently in all of these outcomes. Not the stop, because we covered that, but on the, it's just like what the chief's saying, on the warning side, on the citation side, on the search side, on the hit rate side, all that broken down by race ethnicity. That's what needs to be done. It's sometimes referred to as just officer to officer, peer to peer analysis.
Is there any department in Texas that does that?
There, I mean, we do it for we did it for El Paso a couple of years ago. We do it for agencies. Chad and I do, and I would say most don't want anything to do with that.
Sure, yeah, sure they do.
DPS has a similar thing. There's one of their statisticians built it, and they do it every year with their troopers. And so, yeah, and it's in the literature 20 years ago, and we've been pushing for that ever since. There was discussion of 20, so that was two sessions ago, about the individual analysis, and then it kind of fell by the wayside. And because they get caught on this concept of incident level data and being able to get that data, because some states, they just give it all. I mean, DPS does voluntarily. They just put it on their website, all their traffic stop data people can have, because they don't want to go through all the FOIA stuff that people keep asking for. They just put it out there. But some states, they put all their traffic stop data out there and then let people analyze it. And so that's what that would involve. It'd be the actual raw Brazos database, and then an analysis of it for the agency. And it has to be, that's what I refer to as internal benchmarks. That's what it has to be, because, I mean, the population is just not going to do it for us. And it's about after the stop, the post-stop outcomes. That's what needs to be done. But we've known that for 20 years, so. But I'm still pushing on it. Still at it.
To answer your question, Mr. Mayor, what would we like to see that we don't see here? I'd like to see more longitudinal comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
we have data point X this year. What was it last year? What was it the year before?
Okay.
And see if we're changing in any of these measures over time in a significant way.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Anything else?
And I'll make sure it's Travis County.
Yeah.
Make sure. I'm going to write it in the report next time. They're all getting written in the
Gonna be
report now. It's
bold
not
in the-
just
in the
county
footnote on
population. I'm writing that in there next time.
As compared to Travis County
Exactly.
demographics.
Hey,
Thank you.
We did
Learn
our
from your
analysis,
mistakes.
we found no significant changes year over year. Okay.
all
All right.
That's important to know too.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Enjoy your evening.
Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to items pulled from the agenda. Trista, if you would open those items.
Yes, starting with 4F, approving a conditional purchase agreement and associated conveyance document between 23 Acres Highway 290 LLC, parcel number 24 in the city of Pflugerville, as necessary to acquire real property interest for the secondary Colorado River Raw Waterline project and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Could you open both those, please?
And item 4G is approving a conditional purchase agreement and associated conveyance document between DCI Developers LLC, parcel number 64D, and the city of Pflugerville as necessary to acquire real property interest for the secondary Colorado River Raw Waterline project and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Serena, the reason why I pulled this is because I think that one of the things that we've got to start explaining to our citizens and combating the narrative is that water's not cheap, and that it's, you know, it's one of the things that are undervalued and expensive at the same time. So I just wanted to get a quick presentation on what's being done here and why. I mean,
Sure.
this is important. This is big, and we know there's going to be winners and losers fairly quickly in Central Texas when it comes to water supply. Yeah, yeah.
They're not, the mayor told me he bought $70 million acre feet of water last week, so.
They did, and they're well. Should we be talking about their business? Hey, let me put it this way: water's not cheap.
Well, for all I hear about, our quote unquote exorbitant impact fees, water's not cheap.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Abby Morrison. I'm the Public Works Services Director. We're here tonight to talk to you about an easement that we need for the Colorado Raw Water Line. As you know, that's a 15-mile water line project requiring a lot of easements necessary to construct that. So the first one here on 4F is a temporary construction easement for 0.8 acres in order to facilitate the construction of that project. And I would like you to approve the purchase agreement with 23 acres Highway 290.
And the next item is similar.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
That was
Would-
for,
That was for F, right?
G.
for,
I mean, I'm sorry.
Okay, so that was 4G.
It was both.
Okay.
We don't.
So 4G, again, we are here for an easement necessary for the Colorado Raw Water Line. This easement is
that's 4F.
4F,
It's okay.
parcel 24. So that was 24 we just spoke about. This is 64D for 4G. And that is 0.8 acres of temporary construction easement necessary for the Raw Water Line project.
And what are the price points on this?
So 4F is 100,000, and the next easement for 4G is 118,000.
And that's just for their ability to get the easements for these.
Temporary
easement.
construction
Just
easements.
temporary. Yeah. Temporary
Yes.
easement. That's just for that.
Correct.
To work for that as well. For us
Correct.
to have the
Based
ability.
on appraisals. Yep.
Exactly, and that's just for us to have the ability to do that temporarily, so we can actually start getting that second straw that we're talking about.
That's correct.
So I know when we hear it, we understand from our citizens about the prices and what's going on with this, but I can't emphasize enough that it is expensive to move water around, and it's only going to get more expensive. And I've got to commend this council, the staff, these folks being forward thinking on this issue, because you're going to see things. A lot of people are saying, well, look what's happening around us. Someone mentioned one city around us. Things are about to change fairly quickly over there. You're going to see this around a lot of places in Central Texas, and there's a reason why you got to give a lot of credit to the staff and this council for trying to be forward thinking and trying to get it done now. It's not going to get any cheaper.
That's correct.
So let's do it now and go from there. Mayor, would you entertain a motion?
Please.
Motion to approve 4F and 4G is presented.
Second. Motion and second to approve 4F and 4G. I guess we can only vote on these individually, right, Trista?
I can add a note into the motion that it is for both,
Okay.
and it'll be sufficient.
Love your efficiency.
All right. Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next item is 4J, approving a professional services supplemental agreement with Burdick Consultants LLC in the amount of $271,663 for professional services associated with the 1849 Park, and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
I pulled this one. I just have, I guess, questions or concerns. We approved a professional services agreement with this organization back in 2021. As far as I can tell, this looks to be the same services that we were paying for in that. I see survey, geotechnical, environmental, all related to Phase 1 amenities. So I guess I'm trying to understand, did we run over budget? Did we not get what we paid for? Why? Not to mention there appeared to be according to the agreement, I found in the agreement there was another change order that I assume was below the threshold for council approval because we never saw it. In between here and there. So I'm trying to understand, why I've got a whole nother agreement for what I think I already paid for.
Sure. Yes. Great question. I'm Katie Cam, Assistant Director of Traffic and Transportation. And I'll explain the phasing of 1849 Park, and I think that'll help you understand the PSSA situation here. So we have, can we get do I have control of it? Okay. So if you're familiar with what's built at 1849 Park now, there's some fields and some parking. And that's like near Cameron Road, the southern portion of it. And then there's a phase 2 that's proposed that's just north of that. And that's a separate PSA from that first phase that was built in 2018. And we closed out that phase 1 PSA because we completed the design of those improvements and constructed it. So that was closed out. So then phase 2 was started on the north end. And it was realized that there was more need for parking and lighting in fields in the phase 1 portion. So basically a third project opened up. Sometimes we call it phase 1A, whatever. It's going back to the phase 1 and adding more parking,
We
adding
pivoted.
lighting. Sorry, what?
We pivoted.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that's why we're on top of the PSA for phase 2. We're like, okay, well, we'll just do this as a PSSA to implement the design and improvements for going back and adding some more to phase 1.
How did we come to decide that we needed more services?
That is a great question.
So it's well, we're adding parking and lighting, which is additional engineering services.
Right, but
Yeah.
I guess we had the phases defined.
Yeah.
It sounds like, as Rudy said, we pivoted. How did we come to the conclusion that we needed more parking and we needed more lighting, and that we should go out and get another agreement for that?
Okay,
For those
so-
services.
Yeah, good question. That actually predates. That discussion happened before I started. I'm going to look over here. The consultants here, so here's
Well,
Shane
I
yeah.
should also ask. I've got the original here from 21. It looks like the construction phase for that PSA was the entirety of last year. Did that finish on time?
For phase 1 or for phase
For the
2?
for the previous agreement that we had with Burdick Consultants.
Okay, yeah. Let me have him
All right.
answer that.
Thank you, Katie. Mayor, Council. Councilman, to your question, that it hasn't started construction. It's not been permitted yet. It's been in permitting for 7-8 months at this stage.
Yeah, almost a year.
So then are you telling me that we're not done with this original PSA
With
yet?
phase 2, no, that is a new construction
this was
project.
phase
Was a
1.
new. Okay.
This was all listed as phase 1.
What we
In
were-
2021, you guys had a PSA.
That was called phase 2. There was a master plan, and as Katie was pointing out, phase 1 is the existing 1849 park, the southern portion of it with the soccer fields and the football fields, and the restrooms and concessions there in that existing parking in the entry road. Phase 2 of the master plan for 1849 is what we were engaged in 2021.
Which theoretically is to be the softball fields and the baseball fields.
That's
and work
right.
from there.
That's right.
Then what happened is that it was seen very quickly that the location of those fields would not necessarily be the appropriate location that we had actually phased in from it. And we started to look at other aspects, including we had people parking on the grass all over that specific area. On Saturdays, it looked like Grand Central Station over there until we actually had staff go out there and fence some of those things off. So we saw a need for more parking. Additionally, what occurred was that lighting. The football fields do not have lights.
And if you recall as well, Councilman, there are ARRA funds were sought and then ultimately secured for the lighting for additional parking.
And I'm not blaming you. I'm not
No,
blaming you on that. No,
yeah,
no,
I mean,
because to be fair, that is good. That was one of the good things we did do, is that we had it built in. So hey, listen, when we actually do add lights, we actually have the location secured, and we have the electricity to be able to actually get those cables there, which will save us a lot of money now. Looking at originally with that as well.
The scope for phase 2 never included anything to do with phase 1. There were notional discussions about the need for additional parking because phase 1 parking has long been insufficient since 2018, and ultimately the lighting.
So help me understand that this agreement that we signed almost 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that has been done? Because the time frame at the time said it would have been done by
The
now.
design has been in permitting for 7 to 8 months.
So how much of that agreement has been expended and paid?
whatever through what we call construction documents. I believe we're at 90% of construction documents. We hold back through the end of permitting before we build. We haven't built, for example, on that project in probably 7 or 8 months at this stage. And in
So,
the
so we
interim-
haven't made any progress with that, but we've got something else we need to do.
Oh, there's been massive progress. The design has been in the city's permitting process for 7 to 8 months. And what's needed
That
to take
doesn't sound.
place.
Let me get clarification from staff on that, because it makes no sense for our own project to be lingering in permitting. Is that accurate?
I will find out. I'm checking right now.
Dallas.
That seems odd.
It's taking about that long. I mean,
That seems.
through that process.
Can you come to the mic, please? Sorry.
Sorry. As part of the work that Burdett has already.
Who are you?
I'm sorry, I'm Odalis Johnson, and with Quality Engineering, I'm the program manager for the Parks One projects.
Pleasure meeting you, ma'am.
Thank you. So as part of what Burdett has also completed, they also did a preliminary drainage study that's related to phase one. So
And
there's been
that's
some,
the interim change order that didn't make it to this body.
correct.
Right?
So there's been multiple things that have been completed related to phase one and phase two.
Phase one is additional scope that has to do with the park that was already completed and the opportunity to add parking and lighting, predominantly secured through ARA funds. The drainage aspect of that came about, and we started first talking about this, I believe, in November or December of 2022, because you have a downstream across the road. There is a resident, the drainage from phase one. Phase two drainage moves to the north.
Yeah.
Okay. Phase one drainage moves to the south.
Mm-hmm.
Phase one drainage goes underneath the road into a drainage easement that traverses a resident's private property. What has been discovered is that drainage was a lot more excessive than what was originally calculated by those who designed the phase one drainage, parking, and everything
Which
else.
would not be y'all.
Which was not us. So in
Well,
order,
don't I call someone's bond for that?
Well, that's a discussion we should have at some
Well,
point.
part of that discussion revolved around, they missed some of the terracing that was existing in the field when they were doing the drainage study. And didn't realize that was slowing down the water.
Yep.
As I understand it, I'm just a guy that doesn't know anything about hydraulics.
and so
we did get to go out there and look at it.
We did get to go out there and look at it.
So we worked with the city to say, okay, let's do a drainage study, make sure the calculations are correct based on this additional parking, based on existing conditions.
We're going to make more impervious surface, so we're going to have more problems.
Yeah. In addition to
More parking, more problems.
in addition to the legacy challenge that already existed as well. And so the drainage study was done in order to accomplish that. And then now, as a result of the drainage study, and we went through a couple of iterations with that because the road improvements coming through there, some of that is going to be detained on that property as well. And so we had to do a little bit of refiguring of those quantities. And so now this is to do the design of the new detention, the new parking, and the new lighting for phase one. Separate and apart. It's under our contract, just out of ease to the city and our familiarity with the site, but it is a separate project in and of itself. With the way that the permitting process has gone, this should turn around pretty quickly in design, and it may be possible that this get let and be bid at the same time if the city so were to choose to.
You got to be very careful with this council saying something like that. Okay, okay.
You should. It's always
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you're saying it's possible. What would be a barrier for it not to be able to do?
If there were anything in the funding, for example, that some of this, because the phase one portion is partially secured by federal funds, they've got certain requirements, and so I'm speaking strictly from a design standpoint.
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second. Serena, isn't this part of? Didn't we ARPA fund this last year?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the only thing would be is if there's something the federal government says to us that we've already vetted and looked at that specifically said, hey, listen, this is appropriate for that.
We don't have concerns.
Okay.
Okay. And so that would be really your choice whether you wanted to do that, given the time frames involved. Because we should be able to turn this around in 90 to 120 days.
So you're trying to tell me by this fall, this
Yes,
should be.
and those funds, and the city manager can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those funds also will need to be under contract by the end of the calendar year, if I remember correctly.
Encumbered, correct.
Encumbered. Because, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about is honestly our football teams. Because we built that out there, and we know fully well they're going to need that field.
Right.
They're going to need that field. They're going to need that facility right there as well. So if you're saying they can let at the same time as we're doing it from there, great. Let's turn some dirt. Let's put some lights out there and get some things.
What we can control is a design process, and then once this is approved, we can get the design done, and then from there, it becomes,
You're going to tell us how much you think it should cost, and then we go out to bid and we get a construction contract.
that's right.
Then we
Standard design and, you know, competitive seal proposal process.
But you don't expect any hindrances or hiccups with that.
No, the drainage study helped us, and, you know, to get the science right, especially when you're going back and looking at old legacy data and then having to redo that and then look at what the expansion would be, we feel comfortable about that. The detention and staff did a really good job on, you know, going back and forth because it's a unique site there between the road and where the southernmost soccer fields are. Getting the detention right there and getting the flows, because there's some very interesting flow challenges that go on there, and then making sure to mitigate the impact to your downstream resident.
The terrain is interesting.
It's very interesting, and the soils here are very interesting. But Councilman Weiss, to your original question, this is it's additional work. That's all. It's not a
But it's a
change in
supplement to that agreement. Or you're saying it's a completely different scope, even though all the terminology
That's
used
right.
within it. Is it a different parcel?
I don't.
Because I mean, if you did geotechnical on that land and you need to do geotechnical again,
we did it on phase 2, and
and that's what I mean by a different parcel.
That's
So
it's a different piece.
It's a
of
different
the site.
section of the park, or
That's
it's
right.
not.
It is a
Because
different section.
there's
of the park.
surveying in here. We've done
We have
surveying before. It's not the same surveying.
There's two things. We don't know about the survey on phase 1, and we don't know about the geotechnical on phase 1. City staff is working to secure and see if they have that. And if we do, then we won't need those things. That's why those services are optional. The geotechnical that was done for phase 2 was for that northern portion, which is up on the hill, if you will, to the north. This piece on the southern side, we've got to go back and look at your previous data. And there are some concerns if the engineering was not correct in phase 1, whether the geotechnical data in 2018 or prior to that, frankly, which would have been during the design period, whether it is accurate or not as well.
Yeah, the site plan that I have on the PowerPoint, I think, goes here. So that just shows the southern portion I was talking about. I can distribute this, I think. Am I allowed to do it? I think I do it from here.
Don't worry about it. Just keep going.
Okay. So hopefully you can see this. So this is the 1849 park, and this is the phase 1 portion that's already constructed in 2018. This is the phase 2, and then we're going back to this phase 1 here. So like you said, it's a new project there.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that we had an engineer who did the drainage study. We saw a potential problem. Maybe I need to take a field trip out there to go see it. We saw a potential problem. We paid you guys to go figure out what the problem was, and now we're paying you to go figure out the solution to the problem, and then eventually we'll pay to fix the problem. I feel like there's a cart before the horse here, because if the original engineering was wrong, I think we should be pursuing that before we're.
Well, I think the way these things work, and again, I'm not an attorney, but I think you have to show the harm first before you can go claim damages.
Isn't that the study that we
Well,
paid them to do? Not how much it's going to cost to fix it, but the fact that it exists.
The fact that there's harm doesn't allow you to collect damages. You have to quantify it.
yeah, so we need to.
Tim's right about that.
And you got to remediate it. You got to show what's your intent to remediate it. So
So we gotta spend some money.
Yeah.
Once we have spent money, we can say, this is our harm that was caused by this flawed engineering. Now we can pursue damage.
And then we can talk to Charlie about what you were talking
And
about.
of course, the argument was, well, it wasn't flawed. You guys just made some changes.
Well,
you wanted something different.
That's down the road. But regardless, we know that we need to make changes, right?
Do we?
Yes.
I don't. I haven't seen that justification. All I've seen is the proposal.
Some of us have seen it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Maybe that should have been more articulated.
Yeah, I would imagine so, because all I've seen is a proposal for it. I haven't seen a justification for it.
Yeah, field trip sounds like a good idea.
I think so.
We wouldn't bring it forward if we didn't believe it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
We don't want to spend money on that either.
No.
We wouldn't be bringing it
Let's
forward.
put it this way.
Clearly.
There was a long conversation before it got to this point.
No, you,
And
right.
there
We wouldn't want to do
There was
that.
some stops and starts to that conversation. Right?
Well.
So it was, yes. And I appreciate staff and all your work that you've done on this, just in terms of identifying that there's this possibility of a mistake being made. I don't know if it was a mistake or not. I don't know the right way to talk ambiguously about this from a litigious standpoint, but I'm glad that we are moving forward with corrective changes to fix it.
I think anything we've shown over and over again, an ability for this council and this staff to work with our citizens to ameliorate any issues and concerns as best we can to our best of our abilities. This is an example of that.
I don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but have we discussed reclaimed water for 1849 yet?
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
Okay.
We definitely have.
Councilman Weiss.
We've discussed it, we just haven't figured it out yet.
You got Brandon really excited.
Like, he's jumping out of his chair. This is me. He's even wearing a purple shirt.
Would you
Right.
be
It's about
more
to get hot.
comfortable,
Okay, where are we,
on this
council?
After you had a chance to do the.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I know.
I don't have any more questions. No, I'm just not comfortable with it yet.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Mayor, would you entertain a motion?
Please.
Approve the motion for
I.
I or L?
J.
I already checked it off.
Okay.
As presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
You remind me of that song.
Okay.
Who sings that song? Once. There was
3 nays and 4 yeas, so motion carried. Thank you. All right, next.
Next item is 4M, approving a professional services agreement with Truen LLC in the amount of $421,250 for civil work associated with the Community Development Block Grant Infrastructure Projects to add streetlights to the Skyview Manor and Windermere subdivisions and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
I pulled that, I just want a brief presentation on it.
Do you have any questions specifically, or?
I just want to know when the lights are going up and where they're going to be and how wonderful that neighborhood is going to be now that we're fixing the things that the original developer didn't do down there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeremy,
so-
a lot of credit for how quick this has been.
We've been working diligently with Encore, trying to get moving through with those lights. We've run into a little bit of issues. We found solutions was working with Encore, and then us looking for opportunities to actually just do the civil work. And then we'll get the civil work completed, have that part completed. We're out with our CDBG funds. We will be out. Then Encore will come in and pull the actual wire and actually put in the lights. We will be looking at Skyview Manor as well as Windermere. Skyview Manor does not have any lights at the moment. And then Windermere will have infill lights. So there'll be 12 lights in Skyview Manor and roughly 26 lights in Windermere that would be going in.
So it'll go from dark all the time to light all the time.
Light.
And
that's-
they're all
it's been like that since that development was
That's
built in
correct.
the late 80s, right?
Yeah.
And it was way outside the city limits back then.
Yeah, my in-laws got
And they were annexed in, Mr. Mayor, you were on the council, right?
2007, I believe, yeah.
Windermere got annexed in 97?
Windermere, a lot of 2009, 10, parts of Windermere came in.
Okay.
in
Oh,
9.
parts of it. Okay. Yeah.
These are all LED lights?
Yeah, it will be the standard Encore detail requirements. The things that they install now was LED lights into.
Because they don't, because they
the roof.
have a standard to install non-LED lights, but.
Not anymore. Yeah, we
Not
used to have
anymore?
the high pressure sodium,
Right.
and now it's been transferring
Perfect.
over
'Cause
into
we used to worry about the dissimilar coloration of lights where
Right.
we were putting in new
Yeah.
LED lights, and I was like, we gotta start sometime. So it sounds like that dam has burst, and we're now all LED regardless of different colors, lights, or whatever.
That's correct.
Good.
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 Remember,
We need
Thank you,
energy
Jeremy. Move to
efficiency.
approve.
Second.
Have a motion and second
Yeah.
to approve.
Come on, I was gonna talk
Item
about your items
4M.
No, this
enough.
This is great. People often look at us talking about one side of Pflugerville as compared to the other. It's great to see everyone's gaining in its prosperity.
And motion carried. Thank you.
All right.
And the final item is 4O, approving a
What?
resolution for the annual investment policy.
I pulled this one. I had concern. One of the changes is to remove the restriction on investments more than a year. Now, I think that's because we have some bond funds that maybe we're not spending for more than that. But I'm a big believer that
wait
we
a
should
minute.
be.
You just.
If I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. But no, my expectation is when we issue bond funds, we spend them expeditiously for the benefit of the citizens, and we aren't in the business of earning interest. So I would advise against any move that allows us even to lock up money in investments for longer than a 1-year term.
And to be fair to him, he's been consistent on this for like 200 years.
Mm-hmm. And we have a different opinion.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know the comment was about bond funds, but we also have reserves. And I think that the investment advisor was just recommending this change so that we're able to lock in some higher interest rates with our reserve funds as well. I mean, it could include bond money. We do have quite a bit of bond money right now, and the length of the cash flow of these projects are over multiple years. And we know that the rates are projected to start heading downward. So I think this was an attempt to just give us more flexibility.
So let me ask you this: so when there's an inversion regarding those rates, because you're just like you said, the rates going down, do you have the expectation for us to reverse this decision too as well?
To go back.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's the hard.
Yeah.
You'd see from our standpoint, it's like
Mhm.
Once the gates open.
Yeah, that's the hard part. Is that
Yeah.
usually when we say we're going one way, we never end up going. the other.
We never pull back
No.
authority.
The change
Well,
in the
not
policy just gives us the option to be able to go past 2 years. It doesn't mean that we will regularly do that.
I think so. You used a word that hit me the wrong way, and I think it's probably two sides to the same coin. You said it gives us flexibility to invest for the longer term, but I think investing, the restriction on investing for that duration gives us flexibility with the funds. It enables us to spend those funds to the benefit of citizens more expeditiously. So I think I would just be opposed to that change.
We had a long conversation years ago about what we were doing with some of these bonds, and we were spending these bonds sooner rather than later. And I don't know if we ended up getting an audit on it, but we ultimately said, hey, wait a minute. Okay, these are lagging along too long. If we're asking citizens for the money, why aren't these projects going quicker? So this goes with the whole mindset.
Yeah, especially if we're issuing the money,
Yeah.
so many projects that take so many years to get done. I don't want us to have any semblance of a reason why we might delay a project because those funds are locked up in an investment for
He doesn't want to
2
give
more months.
He doesn't want to give any excuses.
So
No.
I guess let me ask this
But-
question then.
So
if we had a project
God bless you.
that was 90% design or whatever the correct formulation is, and it was ready to go to bid, and we had the money bonded for it, but interest rates were phenomenal, and it was a great investment opportunity. We can make more money in interest than what the
Than what we're paying?
bond money was costing us. Would we move forward with the project and bid it out, or will we say, oh, we're going to delay the project and invest this money?
Boy.
So what we
That's
do.
what your point is.
That is like
That's exactly. We were cutting to the chase earlier, right?
So what we would
Can you beat
do
around the
is
bush a little more?
we would actually have a cash flow from the contractor, from the engineer, on how that cash flow would be for that project, especially like these larger projects that are millions of dollars. We're going to invest in a way that we know we're getting that money out of that investment when we need those funds. And so that's part of my job, is I have to know, or at least with the best information I'm given, to be able to invest that way. And that's what the investment advisor helps us do.
I mean, a couple of years ago, we saved millions of dollars by redoing some of our bonds,
Right.
and saved a ton of money on it. It was a great thing. What I heard you say right now is that we would seek our investment consultant's advice in terms of not delaying the project, but the best way to fund the project and maximize returns on the money that we had laying around.
Sure.
So I don't know that if there's a concern that projects would be delayed so that we can so that the municipality becomes an investment brokerage, right? We're not trying to transition into, let's get a bunch of bond money so we can invest it in the markets and make money. That's not our function.
Right,
Can-
but also
and
at
I
the
would-
same time, is our goal to maximize the return on that in the investment market right now? We also approved the investment report on consent, the rolling 6-month treasury at 5.5%. What's a 2-year investment returning right now? Is it more than 5.5?
480 is what the U.S. Treasury is at.
It's
about
480.
480.
So longer term is actually worse right now. It's inverted. So why would I? There's risk. Maybe in 6 months, rates drop, and I should have locked in now. But my opportunity cost on that is my flexibility with funding projects.
I mean, this is the same conversation my
So
wife and I
I'm
have
willing to-
every 12 to 18 months when we renew our electric rate, right?
Yeah.
It's the-
Do I lock it in now? Do I wait 6 months?
How do I predict the future?
And
that's
I'm
where I
not-
leave that
yeah.
to the experts over
Right.
here.
But I'm not interested in predicting the future with bond funds, with the citizens' money. I'd rather go ahead and put it in tax pool, put it in a rolling 6-month, put it in laddered securities, but no good reason, in my opinion, to go beyond that.
I think I'd feel more comfortable if what Councilman McDonald asked you, and you just specifically said, yes, this is what we would do, was actually denoted in the policy itself. Because, again, as Doug said, we give this away, and then all of a sudden things happen because it won't come up again. Because we won't know. We won't know. And I mean, that becomes a concern for us because it's like you give this power away and go from that. But if you have that in there specifically, what he stated, I'd feel more comfortable with that. I mean, is there a reason why we need to? Is there a reason why we need to?
Yeah.
We need to do this now.
We do have the investment advisor here if she can address some of your questions.
And before that, I'm going to.
me.
You had something to say.
I just wanted to point out that, we have arbitrage rules that we have to comply with respect to bond, but we can't intentionally invest bond funds in a way that generates greater interest than the bond. That's not something we can do.
You're limited to your cost of your borrowing.
Does that mitigate any of your concerns or no?
Not particularly.
Okay.
My name is Jamie Hobbs. I'm with Valley View Consulting.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. Just to kind of, you had a question about it being included in there. If you'll look back to page 5, there is a section of the investment policy called the investment strategies. And it's broken down by the type of fund that you have. And so if you look to page 5 where you have your capital projects, you're specifically asking about the bond funds, your capital projects and special purpose funds, it talks about the fact that you're not going to go beyond but you're looking at the short-term and long-term expectations of your cash flow, and you're not going to extend a single maturity beyond 3 years. So you already have wording in there about how long you're going to invest, a maximum maturity.
Is 3 years the industry standard?
3 years is a normal standard for capital project funds because
my apologies, I probably didn't ask it well. Is it the industry standard? You said it's a normal standard. Is it the industry standard?
it is an industry standard because arbitrage regulations, which was spoken about just a moment ago, capital projects have a tendency to last sometimes 2 to 3 years because of construction, because of all of the different things that go into the projects themselves.
Sometimes a pandemic pops up.
Exactly, and so those types of things happen. And so some of the arbitrage rules actually base them on a 2-year standard, a 3-year standard, and then you're looking at even out 5 years. And then when you're doing arbitrage calculations and things.
Tell me why 5 years?
Because your bonds, the bonds are extended over a long, long period of time. And so you're looking at how the cost of those bonds have been invested and where they fall against the cost of the borrowing.
But there's also, and this is why we have intelligent people like you that help us with this, because there's also that whole, do we issue the bond? We know the project's not going to start for 2 years, but are bond rates low enough now that this makes more sense to issue it now? And even though we're paying interest on that over the next 2 years, is that less, or 12 months, or whatever the window is?
Right.
I'm just
a
bar owner, but and then you do the math for us, right? You come back and say, it's better to issue this bond at now, even though you don't need the full amount until a year from now, or it's better for you to wait and not issue that, and we just hold on to that, and it's like no blood, no foul, right?
There's actually two separate
Yeah,
sides.
I was gonna say, that's our financial
So you
advisor.
you have a financial advisor that tells you when is the best time to do it based on current rates, based on what your expectations are, and so they help you issue the bonds.
Gotcha.
We come in after you've gotten the bonds and you need to invest them. How are you going to spend them? What's the cash flow expectations? And for capital projects specifically, since those are what we're really talking about, the goal is always to be more conservative. Sure. You're going to have more cash up front so that when you do get a little quicker in spending, your project moves faster than you expected, you are prepared for that. Right. So that you don't ever go out to the end of what is expected for the payment. You're always going to be heavy to the front.
Two sides to the same bond money coin.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I've got, you pointed me to some pages. I'm looking through those pages. Yes. And of course, always another rock to turn over. I'm looking at what's labeled the red line version, and I don't actually see any red lines. So I'm trying to understand what exactly changed. Could you point me to a page?
Yes. So if you look at page 9, it is paragraph 8, the diversification and maturity limitations.
Oh, that's right.
Page 9.
Mm-hmm. 9 of 12.
Uh-huh.
And so it's paragraph 8.
Paragraph 8, diversity and maturity, all right?
Yes. So what we're suggesting...
Are there supposed to be red lines in there? Because in the red line version...
It doesn't come across as a red line version on yours?
Apparently not.
No, let me check and see, because it doesn't pop up on.
It's
on your link that way.
Yeah, it's not in the packet that way.
That's
I don't know
fine.
if
I
it was a
put
word.
2 versions in there. I don't know.
Okay.
It's on me.
So tell me in that
So
paragraph
what was
8,
removed from that or suggested, and let me just say this, the investment policy is your policy. These are just recommendations that, that we suggest. We don't want you to have a position to where this restricts you from doing something that would be in the best interest. We don't want to create an audit hurdle. We don't want to create any kind of situations to where you can't invest the funds to the best of the city's ability. So what we suggested that be removed was, there's a sentence that says, unless matched to specific requirements such as semi-annual or annual bond payments, the investment officer may not invest more than 20% of the portfolio for a period greater than 1 year. And it's not specific to any funds, or just to bond funds. It's just a generic statement of no more than 20% beyond 1 year. So that was the suggestion for taking that out. The next sentence says the investment officer may not invest any portion of the portfolio for a period greater than 2 years. That again, we were suggesting take out You can extend it. You can choose to extend to just 2 years. You can choose to go to 3 years. The other portion of it, this seemed to be contradictory to the other portion that I pointed you to just a moment ago. And so we were trying to clarify that since it was already addressed in the investment strategies.
So you're cleaning up.
Cleaning up, yes.
Well, why would you clean up that section and not the other section to align it?
I'm sorry, say that
You
again.
said they were contradictory. Why would
It
you
was
change this
contradictory.
one as opposed to that one? Why wouldn't
Because
you?
it is, because of bond funds and because of the length of time, 3 years is an industry standard for spending funds for capital projects. Like I said before, you don't have to go out to 3 years, but having it as an option if you are going to have a large amount of funds is an industry standard. So,
And in your professional experience, what would be my opportunity cost if I did versus I didn't? How much interest am I losing out on?
I mean, that's
Past results
that's-
don't predict future, right?
that is correct. And I mean, it's all dependent on how quickly you spend it right now. Obviously, we're in a very high interest rate situation, but as you said a moment ago, the rates.
But we're inverted, now, right? Yeah.
Okay. Relatively.
Correct.
Relatively,
Not
yes.
historically.
Not
Oh, yeah,
historically,
yeah.
but I mean,
I mean, my
we're at-
mortgage in 2008 was higher than they are now.
Yeah,
So
Right.
I just want to make sure because we've. It's not just you. It's just in general.
We complain about high
Yeah,
rates.
we've got a level set and say, hey, listen, no, we're doing still historically extremely well.
Right.
So with this change, proposed change in the policy, is there a potential landmine at the end of the day somewhere? And
Our
what
goal
might-
is to try to be as conservative as possible so that there are not landmines. We don't want to ever put you in a position to be in a state where you can't have funds to pay for your projects. That's not our position. We're very conservative as far as that goes. Like I said, we're heavy towards making you cash heavy in the front and then investing your bond funds and investing your funds so that you are making returns. You can plan on what those investments are going to be moving forward, and you can use those funds to the best of your ability for the citizens of the city.
I'm sorry, the name of your firm is?
Valley View Consulting.
Do you do work for PCDC as well?
Yes, sir, we do.
Made a lot of money there.
And I guess a concern going forward that I see is you're our consultant right now. You may not always be our consultant, and with this change in there, the next consultant may not feel the way you do.
That is completely true. And as I said, this is your document. This is your document. It's not my document
Right,
for Valley
right.
View. And so if you're not comfortable with that, then we don't do that. And then you don't do that as the council. But you just want to have the ability to use the funds, invest the funds in the best way possible for the city. And typically what we see is that projects take extended amount of time, and so we want to be able
I
to
get you.
invest you.
I get you.
Yeah.
It's just like they were saying earlier, opening Pandora's box. Do we do that?
So this is an annual policy and it is required to be brought
think
back
so.
to you every year.
I don't know what's not in there anymore. I mean, especially without the red line
Yeah,
version.
I
So
mean,
my request, I think, because
Are you gonna
there are
say
a
it?
couple other
Yeah.
changes that are proposed in here that unfortunately without the red line version, I can't tell exactly what they were. I would ask that we
Second.
backtrack on this
Second.
and we
Yeah.
push it for
the
a
next
couple weeks.
next meeting's fine, but I went in back and checked because it's not even in our packet we didn't have the red
Yeah.
line,
Well,
so.
with staff's input, so that we could discuss changes here.
Yeah.
Instead of just one blank thing on here in the consent agenda, I'd like to be able to discuss it and vote on it.
Well, I guess we can have it on the regular agenda.
Well, that is what the purpose of this is to discuss it.
Well, okay, but wait. Okay.
Well, but we
Let's
didn't
let-
have the
yeah.
we didn't have the red line version, so
I apologize,
unless I
we
put them
got
side by
the red
side, I
line.
don't know what
And
changed.
you-
So
and you know
let's wait
it-
till we have
and,
that.
And you know just as well
Got a red.
as we do that when something's on consent, that's something that usually is okay. Well, they're
It's-
acquiesce as opposed to
It's
something
supposed
that's
to be
involved for-
non-controversial.
Yeah, exactly.
We
So
didn't
there
do that, so
only-
I apologize.
There are two,
That's a
there
difference.
are
Hold
only
hold on.
two other changes,
Mhm.
because there wasn't a lot of changes to the policy. One was, adding another option for training. So we added the Council of Governments.
Correct.
And then we added an additional broker-dealer on the broker-dealer list. all the other little minor changes were like hyphens and commas. That was the meat of the change.
Okay, so
Just
we can
paragraph 8.
review this again and come back in 2 weeks or whatever.
And that's good. And it's good to hear that you said this is the substantive change. The other
Yes.
things are non-substantive, which is
Right.
great. But obviously, still having this, I'd still prefer to chew on this because, again, I know what you're saying. You're like, hey, listen, and this is gonna come back in front of you all the time. It's just you just go down that rabbit trail, and you know how this goes. It's at some point someone's gonna be like, oh yeah, don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Didn't
and
we
I would,
approve this last time?
I'd love to hear the why on the addition, but I don't know that.
And we could do that tonight if you want to.
No.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's why it's on
I mean,
the agenda.
we got an hour and a half, right, Mayor?
Yeah, I mean-
yeah, this.
Well, you don't
Because
have
I
the
won't
red
have any
line
new
version.
information
Well,
until
it's still early.
Like, I won't have any.
Why haven't we heard the why then? If we're able to do it now, why haven't we
I
heard
thought
the
she
why?
did give the why, which
No,
is
the why.
industry
So
standard and-
I don't know why we added another training option. I don't know if the COG does that training.
So previously, the GTOT, Government Treasurers Organization of Texas, was under the University of North Texas, and they have moved from UNT, and now they are part of the North Central Texas Council of
Oh, so they're
Governments.
NT-COG.
So they're in.
Or
They are
NTC
in that.
COG.
NTC talk.
Yes, NTC COG. Yes. So.
But all that's in this version is listed as Council of Governments.
Correct.
But
Because there are
that's-
other councils of government, and so they may have different
So
opportunities.
you want to
for-
have the ability for
Yeah,
the flexibility.
So
to
they
go
can
to-
use that because that is the
I'm-
GTOT portion is a very
Right, but
widely
I sit
known.
on the exec committee at CapCog, and I don't believe we offer that training. So just saying Council of Governments doesn't sound like it's an appropriate addition. But could you tell me more about adding the broker-dealer?
Well, what I was going to say, though, I think it's appropriate because what she's saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Okay.
what I hear you saying is that there's various different other COGs, apparently outside of CapCog, who offer this training, so you don't want to have to limit it specifically to a specific COG.
Right, but
and
I
we
want
can we can blame all this on the mean green of UNT for moving out in the first place.
But I want accredited training.
It is a credit. It's
So-
through. Okay.
Investment training shall be from an independent source approved by the city council, and here's the list of the approved sources. Does that say that it's accredited training?
Or is that just assumed?
And Council of Governments doesn't feel like it's a particular term of art. Not that I'm an attorney.
I'm guessing the other COGs call themselves Council of Governments around the state.
They do.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of
Yeah,
COGs.
that's what I was gonna
North
say,
Central
yeah.
Texas
But
COG, Victoria COG,
Yeah.
they're all pub COGs.
They're all COGs.
So does it need to be councils of governments? Is it like attorneys general?
No.
Each independent council of government is a council.
Can't, it's because it's just council of governments. It's
So we have the red line. I apologize, Legistar automatically turned it into a PDF, so it lost the red line.
lost
But
it.
we had it in the packet, it just
I
converted.
don't believe you. I don't believe you. Not at all.
So what was the other question?
oh the broker dealer that has been added.
Just to add some more opportunities with your
Why would
large
we do
amount
that?
of bonds, just to give you some more diversity as far as the different list. We just added one additional.
What page is that?
What page is it? It's the very last page
That's
of
page
the
3.
of the packet for
Authorized
this.
broker dealers.
Yes, and the one that was added was Rice Financial
And what relationship do we have with them?
for the city yourselves.
What
Nothing at
relationship
this
do you
point.
have with them?
We have worked with them for a number of years. I believe that they are a minority-owned, woman-owned, military-owned, and so they provide just some diversity as far as opportunities and what they'll provide to the city when we're going out for solicitations for securities.
And this is for issuing securities.
That is correct for
All right.
treasuries
And who have we
agencies.
used other than RBC? Because RBC's typically are
The one that we use.
the one we work with.
Yeah.
Oh, you work with all
who
of
have we
these.
issued through?
You work with all of them.
You work with all
We
of
do
these.
it-
When we issue
when
a
we issue
solicitation,
through
we
all.
ask all of them to participate. They provide best offers for the day. We choose with the city best.
So
offer
we
for-
use all of them, but we tend to use one more than the
Well,
other.
I wouldn't
no,
even
who-
say
who have
that.
we-
We
Are y'all
you buy
confusing
from-
underwriters?
Yeah, I think
Ma-
you're,
no,
I
no,
think you're
we're-
a financial advisor.
They're,
Probably.
they're broker dealers across.
Yeah.
For these broker dealers, do you have an idea of how much we placed with each?
At this moment, I have not looked at that to be able
They're-
to say you've done 10 with FHN or.
They're listed on the investment quarter, like all of the individual.
The investments themselves are, but not who you bought them from. Not who they were purchased from.
It goes out on market.
Yeah, because it's through the secondary market. On occasion, with some of the bigger issues that you're doing, some will be able to do direct right new issues because of the, if you're doing a 10
How much
million.
capital they have under management,
Oh,
yeah.
If you're doing a 10 million or a $20 million block, they'll be able to work with a home loan bank or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or something and do a new issue, like that. So not through the secondary market in that issue, but they're providing normally what they have in inventory or through the secondary market.
So if you want to bring it back, we're happy. We just don't know what we would change.
I think we would change, first of all, I think that part in paragraph 8, I don't want there.
Both
I don't want
parts
that
are-
change.
There's 3 sentences. Which one do you want to keep? All of them?
I like the original.
He wants
So
it, he
all
wants,
three.
he wants it struck. Or unstruck.
Yeah.
And if it is, contradictory to an earlier provision, we should probably update
We
that
would need to
provision.
update the other provisions so that they're not contradictory.
And so, the other provisions in this document, we scroll and see to that where it says 3 years.
Yes. So the strategies are from page 2 through page 5. And so we would just need to look through there to make sure that nothing has anything more than a year. Because that's what you're wanting to keep is nothing more than a year invested out.
That's what Doug says he wants to keep.
So could you use that as an example for like Downtown East, a 3-year project?
So as far as like an investment plan, what would you do?
Show an example.
If you had a 3-year project, and let's just say you're on a normal, bell curve as far as what project spend comes back from your architects and your
Yeah, I'm gonna have
designers.
10% at close, right, yeah.
You're obviously going to start out slow because of architectural and all those things as far as spend. And then you're gonna get higher throughout the middle course and then obviously less spend as you go through. We're going to match the expectations in advance of what the project spends are going to be. So let's say you're, 5 million, 10 million, 10 million, 5 million. Just keep it easy. We would heavy load you at the beginning to be cash heavy. We're gonna put normally somewhere between 15 to 25 to 30% in some kind of cash or cash equivalent, just straight off the board. And then what we're going to do is we're going to invest for the remaining spend in advance of when they're going to be. So if we have a quarterly projected spend number, we're gonna do it for the quarter in advance. So your money will be there in June for what you're expecting for July through September. So that you're always having maturities and investments that are there in advance of what your projected project spends are gonna be. And so if you're looking out over a course of a number of years, you don't want to leave those investments just sitting in cash. Right now, we've had an amazing opportunity with cash being the best return right now.
When you say cash, you mean?
Cash, liquid investments, overnight investments, LGIPs.
6-month treasuries, 3-month month treasury, any treasuries in cash equivalents by your terminology?
No, not really. I mean, 3-month treasury bills and things would not be considered cash equivalents. It's anything that would be overnight, your pools, your cash, your sweeps, things like that.
Okay.
So you're not wanting to leave those all in cash. You do have
No, obviously, and I would expect, I think what you're arguing is we can, if we've got a project where 10% of the money isn't needed until we close in 3 years, then we can put it in a 3-year investment. Whereas I'm saying, well, we can just put it in a laddered 6 month.
You do, but then
we can renew it every 6 months, and we have the risk of the rate decreasing, but we also have the risk of the rate increasing. We're
But that's-
compromising the flexibility.
That's your
for-
job, right?
Yeah,
That's our job.
Yeah, but as you said, past performance is not indicative of future results. So we
Right.
don't know which way it's going. And right now, it sounds like the 2-year Treasury is priced lower than the 6-month Treasury. So
Yes.
my risk is if the 6-month Treasury in 6 months drops dramatically, and then it would have balanced out at the lower rate. But considering our investment report has us coming in below the trailing the market, I believe, by maybe 0.2%.
I was
Not
gonna
by
say, very-
much. It's close.
But then you're also invested out across the yield, and right now, cash has been very kind to you as far as the inverted yield has made short-term rates higher than long-term rates, which is not a normal yield.
Not normal, not
Right.
normal, but it's
So it's been an interesting time period that we've been in because of that, because of the
I think what I'm saying
rising
is I'm
rates.
perfectly satisfied with us sticking with 3, 6, 9, 12-month securities, taking on the risk of rates decreasing in the future in order to have the additional flexibility with the money available more quickly. That's my position.
In the language, instead of it being no more than 1 year, you could say no more than 1 year without council's approval or consent. I mean, that comes back to us to be able to.
But then you're having to approve every transaction
Yeah.
that happens on a, when
Over a
you.
year?
Any of those
Is that-
transactions, we would have to.
I mean, how many would that be in a year?
In November and December, we probably did 8 transactions of purchases.
And you need to be nimble on those.
That's what I was about to
Okay.
say.
Yes.
And that's why we said that's why we said the policy.
And that's why you set the policy
That's why
so
we
that we
set
can
the
make
policy.
those actions. Security
Which is-
transactions are day of, time period.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're watching. No, I give you credit. You're watching. That's what the mayor was talking about. That's your job, watching a market like a hawk on that.
Well, your firm has done very well from what I've seen, so I'm confident you will continue to do the same. But you never know. There's always risks.
There are.
Yeah.
And as I said, our goal is to be conservative. We try to be plain and be conservative with your money and help you make decisions that you're comfortable with, that,
Can you give us an
utilize-
example of a situation where your decision went awry and what you did to remediate that?
Well, in the public funds market, everything relates around safety of funds, right? And so,
Yeah, you have a
we're
fiduciary
only
obligation,
investing in
yeah,
things that are allowed. So as far as things going awry, it would be, decisions that were made that an unexpected expense came up and someone needed to sell an investment. So that may not have been the best choice then, but they didn't know that choice at
Is
that
this a
point in
real
time.
example or an example that you're giving?
Just an example that I'm giving.
Yeah, but
We
then
haven't
that-
had any issues to where we've had
that's
something
not-
come out to
but
where there was a
that's
problem.
not-
Has it ever actually happened to you?
No.
Okay.
That's what.
But even if it did, it wouldn't be your liability. It would be whoever the governing board is that screwed up somewhere along the way, and we had to pay an extra $271,000 for a parking lot that should have been built a long time ago.
Right. And as you have grown, your portfolio has grown significantly. Obviously, you have had large bond issuances. You have a lot of money.
We've heard.
Yeah, you have a lot of money that's there within the portfolio. So as you grow, you have to be able to kind of extend that ladder to give you more options.
And to that point, because I think about that all the time, and I know Mr. Weiss does as well as the rest of us should, is that as we're watching our city grow, and I mean, it's explosive, I mean, over the last 16 years, and every time we talk about infrastructure and water and wastewater and sewer lines and straws to the river and all that, and I keep thinking, are we going to have enough money? And it's like, it is our job to make sure that whatever investments that we're making are going to keep us liquid down the road. Otherwise, we're in big trouble.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a call to question, or are you putting?
I
stuff
call
to
the question.
All right. Voting. I'm surprised he didn't bang his gavel.
Forgot.
No, was there a motion?
So
I need a motion.
Motion to approve the
Investment.
investment policy.
With a prior motion from Doug.
I don't know that I
seconded by
made it in
me.
the form of a motion.
He didn't make it in the form of motion.
Oh, okay.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve item
So that's to approve it as is.
as is.
Irregardless
As,
of
as,
the-
as presented.
As presented.
As presented.
Yeah, there you go.
Because if we said as is, then we'd have Doug's. And actually, we wouldn't have to vote on it.
Motion carried.
Oh, that was a close one. Interesting votes.
All right, was that the last item?
Yes. Unless you got some.
Having
something
no
else.
further items, we're